had to go out of here.
I did.
We need to finish that last one.
Okay. All right, so we are officially back in our work meeting. We were on item 2. We just finished item 2.5.
No.
We were in the middle of 2.5.
In the middle of 2.5. The applicant for that particular item is not currently here. Do we want to continue?
Well,
with
we're talking about parking structure.
Yeah.
No, and that's out.
Alan's part.
Yeah, let's hear Alan's part.
Yeah.
But I thought Joe was sticking around for that.
He was, he just stepped out for a minute.
I'll be right back.
Begin with this discussion, I just want to make a couple points. First of all, John mentioned a $16 million parking structure. His project actually has 2 parking structures, which altogether are going to be between 24 and 26 million. Okay? He only mentioned 16 in his previous discussion. Now we've been looking at whether or not we can do that with CDA. This is what our budget is for the CDA as it is right now. We project that we will make 40 million total from the CDA. The CDA expenditures are budgeted at 65 million. Okay, the balance of this 24 million is expected either to be done with impact fees or not constructed. If you look at the right-hand column, that's what we've expended to date. Okay, 32 million. Leaves us $8 million there. Now, the
Wait.
Who have we expended
Right
$32
side.
million to?
it's Wasatch is part of it, and Rosecrest is part of it. This is roads and sewer.
And we're the 6 million in red.
So,
Now, where's the impact fee?
yeah, where's
for all
the
that?
There's no impact.
revenues is 1.1. How can we have expended?
33.
Because the developers on a CDA put the money up front. We pay them over time.
But don't we collect impact fees for all this other stuff?
Well,
We did, but we collected and we used it elsewhere. Because
Maybe that's what we need is an explanation of what's been paid out, why, and how.
So
it
nothing's
was
been
decided.
paid out, so
nothing's been paid.
we haven't collected the money yet. So they went in and put in, what he's saying is, they put in $24 million of infrastructure that we agreed in the future we would pay them when the TIF starts rolling. Rosecrest and Wasatch and the city.
The $6 million is the land that we gave Real to build.
So 12 years
The
ago.
agreement that the city did was that we had to get that money back from the CDA, because we're not allowed to just give money to somebody, okay? So the agreement said originally that this $6 million had to come back to us. Okay, I've got 2 items in red there. The 2.6 in administrative fees should come to the city as well. So we got almost $9 million in this calculation that's coming to the city. So it would be up to the council what they do with that. However, John would have to tell you about the $6 million and what has to happen with that. Okay, now, if this were only case, I think we might be able to make this work, but it's not. We learned yesterday that Real Soccer Facility has applied for a 60% reduction of the property taxes. They want to reduce the property taxes.
Actually,
Which is only about half of their,
Well, they
the
want to.
CDA only covers about half of that property, right?
Well,
It
let's say
doesn't
for sake of
cover their
stuff,
housing,
okay, something
but it
like
does cover this facility.
Say that again, they applied for 60% reduction.
They want to reduce their valuation from $73,700,000 down to $29,400,000. And
Like, give me those numbers again.
right there at the top, $73,773,000 is what it was this year. They want to reduce it to $29,400,000. Okay, so that will reduce their property taxes from $1,123,000 this year to $447,000 going forward if it's approved. It's in the process of being approved right now. So this would reduce the property taxes by $675,000 a year.
Based on what was their basis for asking for a 60%
what they have done is instead of using the actual property value, they're trying to value the property based on what they're saying they're going to earn from that property. So they've gone out, found someone who's given them this information. Now, they did this exact same thing in Sandy and were successful. They reduced their evaluation in Sandy from 115 down to 52, I think it was.
And we based the CDA and everything off of the return to
Okay.
this way back to the city. And now
So-
I'm gonna show you what happens with it.
Based, and like I say, we just got this information yesterday, but that will reduce over the course of the CDA our expected revenue by $8,814,000. So with that out of there, we're pretty,
We're done.
we're done, okay? Now,
There's nothing coming to us.
additionally, I do want to point out right there at the bottom that this reevaluation, in addition from taking $8,800,000 from the CDA, it will take $87,000 a year from the Herriman City Safety Enforcement area and another $21,000 a year from UFA. So, if they're successful with this, it really guts our CDA.
So before yesterday, we had ample money for the first, if the
We were
council.
close.
We were close, we were within,
We thought with this one, we come to council and ask for you to give us.
We were
money
gonna
for
come
the
to you
first
with
parking
proposal.
structure, and we'll go for quarter, try to get the rest of it. We have a plan. This doesn't mean we have to try to figure out some of the ways, but this,
And they
Just a
may
big
be
chunk.
unsuccessful with this, but what was relayed to me yesterday is it doesn't look like it's going to be unsuccessful because they do have an appraiser who's given them appraisal based on this. So, okay, so that's where we're at with the CDA. Okay?
Well, I guess to go back to my original comment, part of what everyone has to pay to build here is they have to pay impact fees for culinary water,
Right.
secondary water, sewer, storm drain roads. Where is all the money for that?
We
Why
haven't-
didn't impact fees pay for that stuff rather than depending on all the CDA to pay for that stuff? Where is that money?
Okay, what impact fees are you referring to?
Well, apparently you built $65,000 worth of those things, so what?
Okay, we haven't spent the 65,000, that's the budget for the CDA.
Okay, so.
Okay.
You said
How much is
32, you said 30,
Sorry.
almost 33 has been expended
Right,
on
So-
things that,
That should have generated impact fees.
okay, what's built
that's
down
the
there?
infrastructure being built. It's not impact fees, it's infrastructure.
What is built in the
Let me ask the
CDA?
question,
Nothing.
that 33 million is earmarked, not,
No, it
No,
is
it's
spent.
slide in the ground, road being
who,
built.
not
who
paid.
spent, where'd the money come
Both
from?
developers.
It's
The
not,
developers have
developers
spent
put up the money.
it's
we
not
haven't
paid
expended.
out.
okay.
and we didn't spend any money.
We spent the $6 million for the property exchange.
Now, when you ask about the impact fee,
But now there's no
though,
money to pay.
we
So
have
what
paid
school property
Wasatch Development about $3 million in impact fees for the roads they put in.
So, Mike,
This is after the impact.
this is a commercial development area.
Yeah.
The one commercial piece, you're telling me can't be funded? That's
said the one-
what you're saying,
The one
right?
commercial
This
thing.
is a commercial development area.
Well,
You
okay.
one commercial piece
There
of the
was
entire
never,
project.
there was never a budget for a parking garage.
Never.
This is what was
But-
budgeted.
But is this just, I mean, I guess to
So,
Jared's point,
there was
We built houses.
So, wait, no, so
No.
the
Under
houses
the
didn't
CDA?
benefit from the CDA money, they don't get the roads, so let me explain, so the roads that tie into Mountain View Course are Juniper Crest, the
Anthem Park.
the water tanks, the sewer that came up into there, those that all, and they could only service the commercial. They could not service the residential. They were incidental if they serviced some of the residential, but it had to service this commercial zone. So Rosecrest built all those roads out there. When they built the residential, it went for other areas. It did not go for the commercial because we had it hasn't been built yet. We'll
So-
get those impact fees in the
We're gonna
future.
wanna see.
So we budgeted $65 million to spend in infrastructure for a property that's only gonna be $22 million?
Well, but let me back up. We don't
That
have to
seems
pay
crazy.
that. So again, anything over the 32, we don't have to pay. They build it for free and we never pay them back. So the land they dedicated, the other things that they gave us, we don't pay them back. Those things they never get.
They only get it back if we collect it from the TIF.
And so what the deal is, if the TIF goes away, they never get the money and we never pay them, and we just got
Nothing
the
there.
roads, the sewer,
There's
the
nothing
water
for them,
lines,
there's nothing for
all
us
the
either.
infrastructure. So all the roads you see built over there for the commercial area, the stuff that went to RSL, the stuff that went around that area was part of
I'm
what
having
we.
a hard time seeing $33 million worth of infrastructure
Right.
for just.
There's a couple
the
more
commercial.
roads that have to be built. They have to build the road that's not finished up between the two commercial
And they
paths.
agreed to do that.
And they also have, and that included in here, and they also have to build the Juniper Crest Road around.
I wanna see
So
like
how-
full
yeah,
accounting.
How much
Well,
of this
we-
33
This
million
also includes the storm drain
Wasatch?
outfall to Rose Creek.
Wasatch is, as I remember, about 6 of them.
6 million of 33 million, and Rosecrest is the rest. But
Like
Rosecrest is-
25.
But
Rosecrest
Rosecrest
has
has
nothing to do with anything
no
commercial.
commercial.
But they built the infrastructure. So when this was put
What,
together,
we need to know exactly what infrastructure,
we could get,
what
they gave us
costs.
the information. We could
Okay,
say,
This
It's
just
all there.
smells to high heaven.
No,
Keep in mind that the 6 million was us.
what,
So take that out, you're 26, then you got about 6 that's Wasatch, so you're looking at about 20 in Rosecrest. Now, we have their summary accounting information, we are supposed to have within the next week, they're detailed so we can audit it. But from what we have right now, this is what we have. And, the whole purpose of a CDA is to put the infrastructure in so that you can build a commercial, or a development that doesn't have to pay for the infrastructure. All the infrastructure for the whole CDA should be covered by the TIF,
Go ahead.
okay? It's not trying to make the property worth that or whatever. All of the other entities have said, we will put taxes into it so that you can build the infrastructure, then we're all gonna get a bigger, assessed value in the end. Okay? The development is never supposed to pay for the infrastructure in a CDA. Okay? It's not supposed to happen. So, but that,
So they never pay impact fees,
no, they pay the impact fees too.
and
but that isn't the impact fee paying for that?
doesn't think, impact fees never pay for the whole thing. It's a
But
portion of the upside.
So,
Yeah,
so it
for
paid
sure,
for the
for
power, the sewer, which we don't have impact fees, and they never got any. And so the storm drain is still going in, all the other stuff is included in these things.
there is at least another $2 million that needs to be expended to get the road to the commercial development that is required. It
And
would
that's
include
included in there.
It would include the intersection at Mountain View Corridor, and the road down to the commercial still has to be built.
So what process do we have to decide so Rosecrest says we built $33 million of infrastructure, we want our money. What process do we have that says we decide who gets paid in what order and what was critical to this project? Because in my mind, Rosecrest shouldn't get anything. They've done nothing to help the commercial development. That's what this should be about.
That's not what CDAs are for.
Well,
It's not what
it's a commercial
CDA
development.
Well, Rosecrest built all the roads you see down there. So all
Okay, so
those
CDA
roads,
For all
Explain
the
that to
houses.
no, they're
What
not
I'm
getting
saying,
for
for the
No,
road,
you're
you're gonna have to show me details that
Right.
that all that money built what you guys have just said, just the commercial
Like
stuff.
I told you, we're getting the documents right now to audit through it. But, right now, this is what we've got, okay?
So
You know-
the road in front of like the academy, the road that went down to
Yeah,
community college.
I'm not the best with math, though. I'm not adding up $33 million.
But also, we owe them like $8 million for the water tanks that went there. We owe them for the storm drain. They brought a sewer line up from Bluffdale up into that area, was $2 or $3 million. So if you start looking at everything, because there was no utilities when that land first came into the city. So it didn't pay for the residential roads. That's not what that money was used for. It was just paid for the area. Now, again, it has the outfall for the storm drain outside the CDA, but it needed to be there as part of the CDA. The water tank's outside the CDA area, but it services the CDA area. So their expenditures for the improvements along Mountain View corridor and all that it paid for. So, again, that's the, their 25 million bucks. Ours is $6 million. Wasatch has another 6. But again, if we lose the RSL, we won't get our 6 million. We were gonna say to you, if you wanted to use our 6 million to help buy the parking structure, that was an option. There was gonna be some leftover money,
But right now, we have no mechanism to even get that 6 million.
If they're successful.
well, if they're successful, then we don't get that. And
Why would we not?
Because the
That's
TIF,
infrastructure that we put up.
It's not being collected.
because it's not, because with the reduction,
So
the
back
TIF
to
is
you-
not
But
generated.
isn't the rest of this commercial development that's on the proposal part of the TIF? Wouldn't that be part of,
You're
adding
saying,
to the TIF? So there is still potential to add to the TIF, so just because the RSL facility comes out, doesn't mean the whole thing is.
yeah, that math isn't working out for me. Budget's $40 million. You're saying that if they make the change that they want to with their property tax, we'll collect $8 million less lifetime.
Yes,
There's still a lot of money left there.
there is.
there's 32 million. but
So
you've
why
already
is anything
committed
more
to that.
important than our 6 million that we put in?
That's the good point. We would have to prioritize. Rosecrest,
Where is that prioritization?
that's gonna be with the council.
That's with you guys.
Rosecrest is gonna say, look, here's our itemized list. They've given us the detailed spreadsheets.
Which
They're
they're
giving us the
in,
audible,
in the agreement, they're due to
and
get
then
paid
you're
when you
going to
receive it.
determine, then he'll determine if those are all, you know, reasonable returns that they should be paid for, and then we've got to decide where the money goes. But it's kind of tough, we had them build all that, and then if we cut them off, that's something we just gotta think about. So they went with good faith to build all that, and now if we're not gonna reimburse them, that's something we
So,
gotta pay
so
closer
I don't
about.
understand, they
But part
went
of good-
forward and spent $30
No,
million,
20,
$20 million
In
on
hopes it would be
good
collected.
faith? I mean, isn't there a payout agreement on these kind of things? Where's the documentation that shows the payout?
well, they did it on good faith, so we can cut them off,
But why would we do that? Why would we agree to?
because we're the
agree?
ones that control the money, we're gonna get all the money.
But even still, it seems like we should have some documentation.
So we don't have any kind of prioritization set up for any of these CDAs?
No, we do on some of them.
The newer
I have
ones.
lots of questions.
Well, we
So-
need
But part, but you
So the
mentioned-
city controls the whole thing.
Right, but
We
part
get to
of, part of
decide.
the good faith component of that was in the TIF and in the assessed valuation of the property up there
And
that
in
would
hopes
help
that it would
generate
be
the TIF.
collected.
Yep.
But now with a substantial reduction in the assessed valuation,
Fall short.
it creates a deficit over the long-term projections of what was initially projected. So by asking for that reduction, now it compromises what the TIF was going to be able to generate and the ability for us to potentially participate in
So-
that
so to
because there's no
Jeremy's
return on the
everybody
TIF.
got paid back,
There
and
was so
you
much-
decide where you wanna spend your $6 million at.
There was so much money that everybody was gonna get paid.
Right.
There was enough to pay everybody. Now the money is being cut back, so the question of prioritization came into play.
Initially,
Before
it was
that,
all Rosecrest. All of the others were bought in.
Can let me clarify something. Is the TIF only property taxes collected,
Yeah,
or
yes,
will it
correct.
not be from
No.
any of the sales tax from
No
all
sales,
properties?
it's property tax.
Property,
Tax income from,
that's why it so negatively impacts
are
us when
we-
you talk a 60% reduction.
Yeah, I got it. In this budget, in this consideration, does it consider the construction of these additional commercial properties, the
Yes.
hotel,
no,
This, yes.
the business
Yes, but
center,
not
all the
This
pads, all that stuff?
projection is based on everything they thought would go in there. Now, the consultant's assuming what's gonna go in there, but yes, this is a projection of everything that's going to be built there.
for property tax, but not building extra stuff.
No.
But going back to the earlier comment, we don't get a parking structure, half of that goes away, because now it has to be parking lot. Now that impacts what that projection
Bring
was
down-
even more.
Although you had to go back to
That's-
the original plan, I don't think there was quite the.
That's what I'm trying to
development
figure out,
there.
if, how, the 60% reduction, is that for all of their property, including
No,
things
no,
to
it's
be
the
built,
CDA.
or is it just
No.
the
No,
CDA,
just-
everything in the area of the CDA, it's not just a single property?
It's just one
No.
property being
Just
reduced
one
by
property.
60%. and that's the RSL, but it's two, but it's the RSL.
The RSL facility, right,
Yes,
okay.
The CDA is many properties.
Okay, but it won't, there's not gonna be a reduction in the property taxes for the yet to be built commercial
Other stuff,
items?
no.
Okay,
But let's throw it in and try it.
so the $8 million difference, we're saying is the trump here, that's really the ultimate difference, it's a $8 million difference, you're saying it leaves us
Well,
in the hole if we pay everybody
So-
else.
To piggyback that, and tell me if I'm going in the wrong direction for your question, but I think what the initial point you made that I jumped all over on was if they're successful in this, the value could potentially drop by that 8.8 million.
Right.
And the comment was made, there wouldn't be money for parking structure. That math doesn't add up either, because we're talking about 21 to 24 and a difference of
Right.
8. And you've got two things highlighted that are up to us to equal about that 8. Is this where
If
you're
you
going?
if you take the two highlighted, you're about 9, the 40 minus the 32, that's another 8, so you're at 17, that we would have, that we have not committed, and I guess that's up to you whether that 32 is really committed. But when you build a CDA, and you asked me to see, it's community, not commercial,
So just community development.
community development. And, you know, when you deal with a lot of these agencies, they require a mix of housing and commercial. It's not just commercial ever, or very often, it's almost always mixed. When we did the Anthem, the county required us to put the apartment buildings in it. They didn't want them separate, so they required that. Okay, it's community stuff, okay?
So then how come sometimes it's RDA?
Redevelopment.
Okay.
And that's because the state legislature changes the nomenclature about as fast as they change something else. So,
Our path, we try to figure out,
And
when we
CRA.
request why the developer to build, the city to fund, or he'd build but would fund the parking structures was, we'd be able to get some of this TIF, pay for part of it, we're gonna go, we told you he was gonna go after quarter preservation money, and get Sauk Community College scholarship parking structure money from the state. We knew we didn't have 100% funding, we knew we didn't have this money sitting in the bank to go pay for them, but we was gonna go out there and see if we can get that money. And the tip was actually, at that point, almost on a no-brainer, even though the council still got approved us to take that money and dedicate it to be paid back to the developer for the parking
but
structure.
again, this money's down the road, so either the RSL or whatever Wasatch or us would have to somehow front the money
Right.
through a bond or whatever.
And the county has a program for bonding for parking structures, a 15-year loan that's very good interest, and they do use TIP to repay. So there was a funding option, there was a lot of things in place. Yesterday, we just heard we could lose a big chunk of that money. Now, back to your point, we're gonna have to prioritize. We're gonna have to decide who's the winners and who's the losers. Everybody was gonna be a winner 3 days ago, 2 days ago, and now there's losers and winners. So that's what we're talking about.
You know,
So
go ahead, go ahead,
there's no way you're gonna be able to answer all of these questions right now, but I'm gonna go ahead and ask it, so.
okay? See what I can do.
I'm just gonna spout them all out, we'll get to them in a minute. How, is the budget set when the CDA is signed?
It's
And how is that
set
determined?
when it's determined by the council.
Okay, so the previous council
Well, we
approved the budget for the
renew it every
CDA?
year.
And each entity capped us. So let's suppose an entity makes more money or we get the money quicker, each one has a cap. And so if we reach the cap on each entity that we have a contract with, the maximum we can get is that 43 million bucks at the top. So we can always get less than that, but they'll never let us have more than that.
Okay,
And that's the county.
I don't know if that helps.
so CDA is essentially, we're gonna take a portion of the tax money to reimburse the development, but no more than 43 million. Okay, I understand that. Then the question is, how is this budget accounted for? Who authorizes the payments? How is that checked? Is there a control on that? How do we determine what market value for these improvements are? You know,
Okay.
I mean,
Let me
this
take a
whole
little-
slew of
Hold on.
cascading questions
Because to
just,
say they built the road and they say they paid this much money,
They have to
That's
show
not
us they
what-
did. They have
that
to
might
show
not
us
be
they did.
what we would pay for.
Like I told you, we are asking for a complete accounting. We have not given anything, we've told them they don't get anything till we get the complete
There's no
accounting,
checks been written.
which will be audited. We have a summary that Blake is reviewing to see if it's reasonable in the amount. But right now, it's not going
No
in.
payments are made unless we,
It's a budgetary item.
is that the case for just the
Well, it's
CDA, what about the
all
other CDA?
That's
Because
all of them.
I'm thinking back through my 4 years, I don't recall us having any kind of detailed discussions, quite honestly. My assumption was that there are rules to follow with any of these.
yeah, how are the priorities
I
set,
can't
who
imagine.
determines those
Yeah,
priorities?
Imagine.
You know, who gets
The
paid out
council gets
first
to
and what
decide
order
on
and all
that.
that.
So for like the
Wow.
town center is the only one we've really paid out on. All the rest have not been
The
triggered.
TIF has not been coming in from this area yet.
Well,
So
We
there's
just
no
got the
budget
I know,
for
I've
this year.
not, I've
That's
not
why you
seen
haven't seen
any
a
actual
budget for
expenses
it.
for the
First of
town
all,
center.
we are not paying out for the town center either.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
gonna say.
that's
The
fair.
only
Yeah,
thing
we'll check
the
the
only thing on the town center is that the bond, that bot's part of the improvements is being paid by the TIF.
That's on that. We
No,
paid
There's
the
no
bond.
bond over the developers, put
We're
the
not
infrastructure
giving
paid
them
for
any
it.
money.
Here, there was a bond taken out.
So at this point, you haven't given anything to the developers. And that's why you haven't seen it.
That would be what, cause I'm like, I
Well,
swear.
And the TIF is coming in well on the town center.
But part of
Back
the,
on.
part of the reason for not having a prioritization of the repayment of that is because it was anticipated that there would be more money than was required to be paid back, therefore the prioritization wasn't necessarily
Well-
needed. But now that we project an anticipated shortfall, now we're talking about prioritization and who the winners and losers are.
Yeah, it still seems like there
Feels
should
like
be a
it's-
mechanism for
yeah.
like almost a cascade, like you get so much % of the first dollar and you get the X percent
And that's
until
what you
everybody
guys
gets
get to
paid back.
decide. That's what
They're
the
never
council decides.
the case is though, all of our CDAs started with one developer, okay? There was no prioritization to do. It was one developer. They were gonna get it all.
It got
Now-
them involved in this.
They can't get any more than what their costs are. We can't collect any more than what their costs are, okay? So that's what ends up.
I would say right now, I'm not really comfortable with the city taking the whole loss, if that makes sense.
No,
If there's,
I'm not either.
if there's a discount in the TIF that's coming in,
I'm
the
not
taxpayers of
comfortable with the
Herriman
city taking any
aren't gonna
loss.
be the ones paying for this, right?
Right.
This is not
No,
cool, so.
I'm not comfortable taking any
No.
loss.
Yeah, I understand.
If taxes come in
Reason
lower
why you
than
don't
what
want
the
it.
costs are,
Absolutely.
it's their problem, not us. We only pay what we collect.
So, I guess I would say that, this gets bigger. I'd really like to see the kind of chronology of this, how it started, you know, where we made some adjustments, how some of these ideas were incorporated, where the assumptions were, you know, because I'm trying, I understand what you're saying is the current circumstances. I'm curious as to how we got to these circumstances. And then it opens up a whole lot of questions for me about how many CDAs are we a part of? How are those budgets set? How are those being accounted for? Are they being audited? Do we have
Well, first of all,
internal or
everything
third
we
parties
do
that are
is
looking at these things? I mean, financial control is a huge part of what we're supposed to be doing, and I don't know about you guys, have you ever seen a CDA budget or
makes
how
me
these work?
understand
I'm not sure
better
how this
why-
works, so.
The entities that would potentially agree to give money to these things are reassessing.
Yeah, there's not enough controls.
I can tell you, we have more than anyone else out there. I've looked at them, but we have more controls,
Oh, okay.
okay?
Say,
Now,
whoa.
we're not giving
Interesting.
them any money till we have accounting for it. But you know, when you have a CDA and you have one developer out there developing a project, and he's got CDA money to build the project, and we have review of how much it is, and we have review of an audit of it before we pay them, we're not giving them anything. They've put out all this money and we haven't given them anything, okay?
Do we have a mechanism that evaluates what to do? If, for example, they submit an invoice that says they spent 2 million, but we think really is only $1 million expense.
Invoice is one thing, they gotta show us the actual cost, why the contractor
cost.
did the work.
What, I mean,
Well,
but what
even
if the
at that,
contractor
Then
that
we
they
give-
hired
Then we
is
give them $1 million.
too expensive? That's
So
what I'm
we
just
have
wondering.
complete control over that.
Okay, and
That's
I'm
why
curious
we have
about
our
those
engineer.
mechanisms
Yeah,
and
those
what that
are-
process is and who oversees that and who double checks that. I mean,
And it's
I'd
not
like that
just the CDA,
explained.
it's with every contract we do.
Sure.
So it's no different than if it was just regular city money. We do that with everything. So it's the same process. So what you're asking for is everything we do. Before we spend it, the council always has to approve it. If we do a shortfall to somebody, the council's gonna approve it. Before
Well,
we do
we
that.
approve it in aggregate. I mean, we're approving
Okay,
large budgetary items, not line
No,
items.
you,
No, these are
these would be line items too.
this is
These have
what
no
they've
details
told
in our
us they
budget.
spent.
Why,
They have not gotten any money until they prove that's what they spent.
why would, I'm trying to put myself on the other side of the fence. If I'm the one spending the money, why in the world would I without any assurance that it'd be repaid?
That's
I don't
on
get
their
that.
side, but you're right. On our side, we knew we have all the control. And so you have all the control here. We're gonna come back and they said, hey, we don't really have any assurance we're gonna get this money. And they recognized that and they brought some documents to try to have us start looking at it. Well, we saw the shortfall. We're gonna come back and talk to you before anything. This is
So-
gonna be approved by the council.
The problem, at least, the immediate problem that I see that all this boils down to is that short of knowing all the chronology of what's happened, et cetera, the fact of the matter is that we now have a project that presents everything that we need in this, not just this area, but for the city, presents everything that represents what these things are really for.
That was about 9 years ago, the
And
business park right there. That's what the infrastructure.
if I'm on, John's, it's okay to address council for him to weigh in. If I'm on, is sitting in his shoes, what I'm hearing from our discussion earlier is if the parking garage doesn't happen, well, then this would be half the size, et cetera. Well, in order for us to agree to a development agreement, we wanna have that site plan that includes everything. Well, they're not gonna do that unless we can give them assurances
That's
that
why
we get
this is
paid.
being brought by for it, it's been a multiple seasons happened last.
So your question for us is, are we willing to eat the $8 million?
No.
Is that what you're
Not
saying?
at all, not tonight.
We did today, we
It's
just wanted,
giving you
we
information.
told you we had money and there was a good way forward. That changed 2 days ago. We had the money to do this. It was, we were gonna bring you the whole process, the timing, who gets what. All of a sudden, the money disappeared.
Yesterday, Alan, you talked to the county, they
No.
says, they feel like it's.
Yep, it was yesterday morning.
It's okay, John.
So.
And we talked to John about this too.
We're not,
Can I weigh in?
Yeah.
John, go ahead.
A portion that I think we ought to kind of focus on is that budget of the 42 million that we started with was created by Susie Becker at Zions Bank Public Finance years ago, right? And she looked at
This
the
is a
map
new number as of 30 days ago.
as of 30 days ago.
Yep.
And so it's probably not far off from her number, I would imagine, right? There was an anticipation of what would be generated from the map and all of the property that's inside that boundary. So we have X amount of acres inside that boundary that we anticipated would generate X amount of revenue. Now, when we talk about tax increment, it's not just the taxes, it's less basis, right? So it's the incremental difference in the current basis of tax value versus what it will be later. So keep that in mind, because that's critical. Less fees that the city would apply, less the 70-30 cut that comes off of it right off the top. So what we do is we take a look at the property that the training facility sits on, which is only half of the property the training facility sits on is in the CDA. We should look at that and say, what was estimated that property would generate in tax revenue, and how is it differing now that we're taking this cut from RSL? Rather than saying RSL is an $80 million project that we're cutting 60% of, it really only had a portion of it in the CDA, that when we did the budget, it was only gonna estimate it to create X amount of value, meaning, for example, that was the school district land and it was the Rosecrest land that was merged together that became half of the RSL training facility.
that's correct.
That land, we should look at and say, what did we expect that land to generate in tax increment? Because it probably had surface parking, it probably had a couple commercial buildings, and it was probably going to be, I'm guessing, maybe a couple $100,000 a year in total generation of tax increment. And now we're focusing on it saying, well, the training facility is being cut from $80 million clear down to 60%, and it's only gonna be a couple million. I don't think that's the right way to look at it. We gotta look at what we thought it would do and what is it going to do.
Now,
Alan,
I
is
agree
that
with
right?
everything you said, the only thing I wanna say is this, the $6 million land changed too since that first agreement, that first analysis, because the $6 million is to buy land for ourselves.
Okay.
I'd like to hear what you
As
have to
I
say about that
remember from the
specific.
budget, the original assessed value on this property was $1,576 an acre. It was agricultural land. When this was created, that's the number that's sticking in my head right now. It was not 1,500, 15,000.
That's like the general.
15,000 was the assessed value of this property before it went into the CDA. So, you know, whether you're looking at what we thought was gonna be in there, what's there, this is the most recent estimate we've got, and this was just, with no more than 60 days ago, okay? That we got this new number on the budgeted revenue. So anything that reduces from this number is already taking into consideration the facility. And so,
Really,
I don't buy the
the
argument.
projections are, is monopoly money anyway, it's projection.
Right.
So what really matters is the payout priority, right? And then it's up to,
It is.
It's more critical now than it was before.
Now, just a point before you go on. The revenue that we've received to date on the CDA is about a year or a little more ahead of what the projections were. Essentially meaning the stuff has been built ahead of schedule. And that's primarily the soccer facility. So, we are ahead of schedule at this point. Now the, part of that $8.9 million that I'm talking about also is because this, according to the county auditor, will be a retroactive correction. It's not gonna be just from here going
So
forward.
it's current taxes coming this year, we're gonna have to pay it back.
So it's big.
Well, we won't be a
They
retroactive correction.
will
won't
just
Where's
give
that
them
1.16?
credit in the future. They'll give them credit for what they've already paid.
So, what Jared's comment about, you just let, even if it would've stayed the way it was, we would still come to council and say, okay, Rosecrest wants some of the money, Wasatch Hills wants some of the money, we need some of that money too. What's your priority?
Right.
And you still would, if everything would've worked out the way it was going, it doesn't change that. Council gets to decide who gets paid first, who gets paid last, and who
And
gets paid all.
my first thought is we need, if a priority hasn't been set up for each of the CDAs that we have, like, we have to do that with every one of them.
Yeah.
We can't wait until something.
The other ones only
It's
have
usually
one.
just one developer, this is
Okay.
different.
But even still, I think it's even like you're talking about picking winners and losers. We shouldn't put ourselves in that position either to pick winners and losers. It should be very spelled out on these agreements. What position, we should never go into, just because we're in control on this side, it means we take control and we say this is the way it pays out.
Well,
We should
and
never-
more
How
so
do you
to-
choose
more
that
so-
when there's one person
More
to
so
choose
to
from?
that point, it shouldn't be that we're picking winners and losers, it shouldn't be the fact there's only one entity involved. What it should be is, what are those priorities that should be reimbursed and in
Road,
what
sewer,
order?
water.
What are the what's the actual infrastructure
That's a
priority?
reasonable request.
I think
It's
that's-
much
I
more
think we-
Regardless of who the entity
I think that's easy. Cause
That's
that's,
is. And then it
outside
takes
my
winners and
purview.
losers out of it.
Roads
It's
were
the
built, they're in,
project merit on its own.
most of them.
That's actually.
because I think all those are the priority, we said those had to be done. And those are all listed very succinctly where they are, they're given station length, size of pipes, so all that's in the documentation. So we have that very easily for you in all the projects.
So I have to go back and apologize, my comment of this stinks to high heaven is the thought of picking winners and losers, right? That to me, that's like everything that's wrong with government and public finance is that sort of setup allows somebody to profit at someone else's expense potentially. So that at least would be what I'm, where I'm at is that
Well, to
we
Alan's
should never
point,
be in
though,
a position of picking winners and
With
losers.
only one developer, there is not a winner or
So-
loser.
so
The
there's-
developer gets
But
it.
it
But
can
in here
start out
there's-
that way, and then they sell off
Right.
pieces, and
And that's
what's happening.
So let me ask right now,
You
in
can't
this
even enter
CDA,
thinking that way.
we've got Wasatch, we've got Rosecrest,
Does Rosecrest still own any?
Where's this?
In this CDA, we have
Us.
RSL and us.
No,
RSL,
Ourselves.
it's
We don't.
really, Wasatch is that. So it's Wasatch, Rosecrest, and us.
Wasatch, Rosecrest, and us. So there's 3 entities, right? And we're supposed to determine who gets paid first and how much and in what order.
usually
It's
you
the
want to have
benefit
the
of the
infrastructure first,
project.
that's usually where you wanna go.
And I think when you see it, we'll give you the map and all the details, it's all the commercial area that they paid for and did. And so you're gonna see that very succinctly, all they get paid back for. They don't get it for the residential areas or the other stuff they did. That doesn't get reimbursed.
So, without addressing all the other questions, if I'm bottom lining this, Herriman doesn't have the money to invest in this parking garage,
No, we
Not
didn't
from
say
this-
that.
Not from this.
not from this.
No,
Well,
so,
we do not have the money unless we buy it where it's fronted by unless we borrow it where it's fronted by the developer.
Okay.
We do not have.
So I got a nod in the comment from John, I asked, is that kind of what you're looking at, so I'll restate it maybe, and stuff, cause what we're talking about is them being able to move on with the project and us rezone it, et cetera, right? I'm like, and correct me if I'm misstating this, but I think it's important we have a site plan attached to a master development
Absolutely.
agreement.
Absolutely.
And if I'm in their shoes, I'm not gonna give you a site plan unless I have some
Sure.
idea of
Or they're gonna give
some
us
idea of at least what the
exactly right.
priority
A
of the
reduced
payments
site
is going to be.
Yep.
Is that
Yeah.
anything to add?
You're absolutely right on.
No, it's right on. I mean,
So-
we're ready to build that with a parking structure. Without a parking structure, we can't build it. It won't pencil. It'll be a ghost town. So we can give a site plan once we know if there's a parking structure or not. And that's really where we're at.
And were you anticipating putting in the parking structure and having this to be reimbursed, or how were you anticipating that to happen?
Yes, we're looking at financing it and getting the reimbursement through the CDA as a priority because we feel going vertical is what actually triggers.
But in order to finance it, they wanna know what the funding schedule is,
Yeah.
the priority.
You can't go to a bank without a funding source for it.
Right.
So we
Is
gotta
there
supplement
another,
that.
there's other sources,
Is there
but
another
this was
source
the
to-
one we were really focused on, because there was plenty of money in here, we felt we could work something out. We are looking at other options for funding,
And some of those
and so
are
we are
the
looking
timing
at
of our sale.
like, I'd have to hear arguments, but
Parking
I'm persuaded at this point to assume that there's $8 million for the city of Herriman.
We was gonna come back and ask you for that to be spent on parking structure. That's when we saw, okay, we can't, that would've been more pretty solid money, that was, we have to go ask and go ask and go ask.
So we felt we could backstop it. Again, we're looking at $24 million, but the idea, we talked to John, let's get the first one funded because we're several years out before we gotta get the second one done. And so the idea would be, let's get the first one in place and then we'll keep working and get the next piece funded. And so we had a pretty good funding package until just 2 days ago.
A plan, it wasn't a pack.
Well, yeah, it was
No
a
package
plan.
that was approved by council.
We're gonna bring you something to look at to see how to do this. We felt we knew how to do the funding.
We heard loud and clear the council was supportive doing parking garages, try to figure out ways to make it happen, and that's what we came up with. And it's just through another cog, and we gotta figure out some other,
But we're basically now put in a catch-22 almost.
oh boy,
We,
that's what Jared was saying.
what Jared was just stating in doing the rezone, attaching a site plan, giving assurance for the funding, but just as John just said, once all that triggers with the TIF, with the reduction that we're seeing here, now the TIF's not gonna generate what we need, what we had anticipated it would long-term to get that full repayment back. And so,
And the city, when it invested that $6 million, we knew the anticipation what that probably would be valued on property taxes, come back to the TIF, it was anticipated.
Right.
And the city felt good and confident that they was gonna make another investment back down the road, so we could stay in legal graces we're supposed to be in, where we borrowed that money from, to make that happen. Our self-practice facility's been a wonderful facility for our community, it is. But nothing comes for free, right? And that was the launch that the city said, okay, we will buy that school property, and we did.
I would like personally to address the order for payment first.
I don't know if you can do that yet, can you?
We'll bring you something. We just wanted to
Not
bring
today.
you the issue, so
But,
you understood what we're wrestling with.
Before I'm ready to go in and say, yes, no, parking structure, no parking, how do we fund that? I think we need to deal with this first. I think this is the priority. because we have to determine in as ethical a way as possible, how do we determine who gets paid and who doesn't? And I can't, in good faith, work on that if I'm also thinking that I can't make a decision on that other item if this is still hanging over.
We can bring in all the stuff that was built and show it. Sounds like Jared and the rest wanna see that, and we can go through a big presentation. The audit still will take some time before we go through all the numbers, but you can see the exact spreadsheet, the exact roads, the exact piece of infrastructure they built, and the price of each one, unaudited numbers that they're attributing to each one of those. And then you can see that everything was built specifically for this commercial area that's being reimbursed by the TIF.
So just to summarize tonight's discussion of just a couple minutes ago, I kind of summarized the numbers in my words as I wrote down. I said, so you're asking us if we're willing to eat the $8 million, and the answer was, well, no. But then just a second ago it said, well, yeah, we're gonna ask you for that, because that's the easiest way to do it.
I'm not asking you to know, we're not asking you, he's asking, that was a funding mechanism for you to know, but it's still not gonna come in for years. Is give the assurance to the developer, we have a mechanism, money coming in to reimburse him for the first parking structure.
But we don't have that currently,
Same.
based on our
But
numbers.
we don't,
It's even worse than that. We don't have the money to pay back. We're not gonna generate enough funds to pay back the supposed
That's
infrastructure
right now.
that's already been built, let alone what
Funding.
remains to be built.
well,
Yeah.
in reality, we probably can pay back the infrastructure been built.
Cause
It's
it's only a
there.
reduction of
It's
8 million.
it's the 6 and 8 and 2.6 million.
How much is the reduction with the reduction of the RSL facility?
It's,
8.8.
8.8 million.
So it goes
So
about
it's-
32 million or so.
Yes, I mean, we still,
And so their estimated
can
was
still
about
pay back what's
25
being built.
million. And
it's just
so
why.
that leaves about
It's just
7
whether
million.
you make the
saying
parking garage a priority over what's already been spent.
yeah, but even if we can move forward with one parking garage, cause the other one wasn't anticipated to be built for a long time, and then we go after all the other money.
But even at
Candace
that,
said
in order,
she would look into getting us some money on, remember, we had that conversation.
I guess you do it two ways and say, well, okay, we're gonna prioritize that one, and then we'll figure out a prioritization scale for everything else,
Cause I think this.
Money's not coming today,
right?
you can
I
promise
mean,
the money.
that's what that
I'm not.
route would entail,
Yeah.
rather than saying, this is how we're gonna structure this whole thing.
And that's my concern, is
Make sure there's no winners and losers, and it's done for the project good here. That's why it's not just, like, this isn't a conversation just about this project, it's this area, and to me, it's the other CDAs as well.
So just so you kind of get, on the developer side, they'll go in and put infrastructure thinking they're gonna get tipped. If the buildings never come out, they are the losers because it's a risk, and they'll never get paid. So developers always are on the risk to be losers, because if they have the downfall of the economy, they lose it all, the city still gets the infrastructure, and the taxes never get paid to them. So there is a huge risk of,
To the developer.
so for example, if no one ever builds this commercial and the RSL doesn't come, they would have paid all that, the timeline would have ran out, and they would have never got a penny, and we don't owe them a thing. So I'm saying that is a risk of developers with these TIF kind of situations. So it's not that you guarantee you're gonna get paid back.
And you all know that communities don't have that kind of money, if there's an infrastructure project, that don't face that, just not that mechanism. That's how you do the partnership.
Sure.
And some developers are willing to go put the infrastructure in up front and willing to get paid back over time and through impact fees, whether it be TIF, whatever, in whatever agreement it is, that they're willing to do that, take that risk. That is a risk.
So we have other funding mechanisms we want to talk to you about. There's other things that we've come up with. So this wasn't the only way. It was just kind of a clean way to backstop everything, to get this going so we could get phase 1 under construction. We were really disappointed because tonight we were gonna come in and celebrate that we had a real good backstop, a plan. It was gonna go forward, everybody's gonna be excited. We didn't, Alan didn't do that. So,
It's Alan's fault, sure.
Well, we're glad we got
I've been spending a lot of time in Alan's office trying to make all the numbers work, and
Been here.
they quit working yesterday. So we're gonna come back with other plans, but if you want, we could hold that and come back with all the RDAs, the CDAs of the city.
I think those are
Okay,
I think they were conflated issues because this CDA was gonna be a mechanism for the parking garage. I think we need to uncouple those at this point, right? Obviously, that we can't use one to fund the other at this point.
We started uncoupling today.
Okay, so we're uncoupling those. There's still a significant discussion to be had around CDAs about the accounting, the checking, the auditing. I mean, I'd like to understand, see that better. And then there's another discussion to be had around, do we have mechanisms or options to help with this funding, this parking garage? Because we think this is key element to
We
the
do,
commercial
that's why-
future of
yeah,
the
this
city,
wasn't-
right? I mean,
This
it's
is,
not parking lot.
this is the only one we've looked at. We've been pursuing a number of other issues, and we'll go through the list of other issues
Options, not conditions.
and other options.
That's what
Just keep in mind though, office buildings don't get you very far. You won't get enough money to pay this parking structure back with office buildings. You won't. We make about $500 to $600 a year on office building property taxes.
So we need the office building fee for
Yeah.
commercial balance out.
Yeah.
And I think the projected tax revenue off of that commercial development is substantial to our.
So if it's only property taxes, you're probably looking at about $500,000 over the
Yeah,
course.
we don't want
of
property,
We're
we
not
want retail
talking
sales
retail
taxes
sales
from,
taxes.
Okay.
Hotel taxes are
So,
huge.
But there's still not enough. He's run some numbers.
Very
It'll
curious to
take
hear.
50 years to pay back on the parking garages.
We'll go through that, and there are legitimate other options to make this happen. This was low hanging fruit.
If they would fit to match the financing.
I know what they're looking at, what they need. We know we have an upfront funding source with the county. They will take time over a 15-year period. So it's the same thing they did in West Valley City, and they'll do it again. So it's not a big issue to get that for this kind of situation. You just have to have a source of funds, and that's really what we're gonna be talking about.
but we're essentially borrowing the money to pay back your initial investment in the parking garage, is that what we're saying?
That's one option.
I was trying to put together so they wouldn't even come up with the upfront cash. So there was a number of ways we could deal with this and make it cleaner and easier.
The county believes in these things to get things moving there when their bonding capacity and funding capacity is different dollars.
So is this what's been holding this up? I'm looking at John, we're saying we're just finding this out 3 days ago. Is this what's been holding this up for so long, or has it been the
The
planning
zoning just
commission issue, or what?
The zoning just happened last week.
This is certainly holding us up from an investor standpoint. So you gotta realize, I've gotta sell this to the investors, we gotta show them what they're gonna get.
Well,
And
what
so-
we're hearing is that this is an issue 3 days ago.
I learned of it yesterday.
Yesterday. This is
As
an
far
issue
as
yesterday.
the tax adjustment yesterday.
We'd had a lot of discussions with John on this issue, and then we didn't
About
really
how to fund
understand
it,
it.
but
We've never been clear on understanding the sources, and we need to put together a very clear sources and uses on this project. And right now, the sources is unknown.
So while you've been going through the planning commission, et cetera,
Yes.
been trying to get this part nailed down.
All the site plans I've been presenting anticipate the parking structure.
This is the first conversation we've had about this part of it,
the shortfall, yeah.
or just the funding side of it.
No,
We actually talked about it in a work meeting,
Yeah,
about
we've-
the
We've
TIF.
come a couple
Yeah.
times.
And
We use
we're-
TIF.
we
Yeah.
talked about it several, because you said I thought it was good.
But that's what this affects is the
We
TIF.
talked about
Yeah, we've
CTA.
talked about this.
But so the fact that they're seeking this reduction,
Affects the
I'm just thinking the financing part, the finance guy part of me, is that to get this deal done,
Going.
the investors wanna have an assurance of getting paid back. I would think they would have been asking for that assurance well before now.
They have been asking for it.
And all I've seen as far as that discussion is, we'll pay it from TIF.
Well, we said CDA, we said.
No detail,
The
just-
last work
that's
meeting, I
right.
said,
Right,
we're going
because
quarter to quarter,
we wanted
we
to get
actually
the
laid out some
audited
other options.
numbers. We wanted to have better recollection. So we've had meetings with Rosecrest, making sure when we bring you a number of what they were gonna get, what everybody was gonna get, we wanted to have exact numbers so
So
everybody was
you've been
clear.
waiting to get that information.
Yes, for us to declare the TIF as being a source, we needed to understand the budget from the Rosecrest. What they are presenting, their claim to the TIF is. But if you would decide on a waterfall, wouldn't matter if we were 60-40 on a waterfall. Then
We're
we
like a
would
year
know
into this,
off the budget what we would get.
or more,
But
right?
when we first requested about the city funding, I went, how are we gonna pay for that?
Yeah, but the parking
I
structure.
remember us talking about this like a year ago summertime.
Yeah, there was no way,
Structure, yeah.
everyone thought that we could just come up with the money. We don't have that kind of money.
But how come, why is it such a why is it such an issue to have Rosecrans give us the information? I don't understand why, if they're saying we have all these bills, why
Because
is
TIF
it?
has not started coming back
Because we
in on
won't pay
that
them
or
unless they
anything
give us
back.
that.
We don't have.
We wanna make sure they're not
either.
exaggerating. If they're exaggerating their billing, we may have some more money.
What I'm getting at is that this should have been a conversation a long time ago about who's gonna get paid and how financing is gonna work.
Well, and there was other issues too, because when we put this TIF together, it doesn't say parking structure, it's very limited. So we had to work out a legal way that we could even use the TIF for the parking structure. So it wasn't that, when we
It
went to
wasn't
the entities-
originally earmarked for
There
that.
was not, when we put this in, there was no earmark for it, so we had to go through a lot of gyrations before we could, we told you we were looking at the TIF, and we've gone through a bunch of hurdles before we could come to you with a plan that would show you how we could use it. So if we'd have come to you and said, yeah, we can do it, and then, well, I thought you had all these hurdles, we do, we gotta get through those. Now we're getting to a point where we could give it to you, but the money just got ripped out.
I do have a question that I'm trying to wrap my head around. If the CDA says that there's only, you know, estimated $43 million maximum revenue here, why would the developer be willing to invest $65 million in expenses? That's a question I'm.
Without the CDA, would he put 20 million in to put a development in there, or that's his?
I just think,
That's his
it seems like bad business to say, I know the budget's only this, but it's okay, I'll throw in $25 million because I'm a good
They get
person.
to
No.
develop, that's where
No,
they get back.
you're looking at
They
it
build.
exactly backwards. He's got a $65 million worth of improvements he needs in that, and we're saying, we'll throw you 40.
Yes.
Cause he was gonna have to put the money.
He's got to make it off.
He had
to do it
his
anyways.
It's not ours though.
Also, Mayor, from a developer standpoint, keep in mind that ground was worth a lot less before it had a road in front of it. So when he sells all that, which is what's been happening.
Sure.
He's making his money back, even though he's not seeing that he's making money back.
Not making from the
He's making
TIF, he's
money
making
from
money
the
back
sales
from,
tax.
okay, I understand.
That increases
Okay, that
the
answers the question, that's what I was.
That's the case with everyone who owns land down there.
That's why they
They're
want
getting-
to.
Improved land is worth more than unimproved land, I got
Hey,
it,
he's getting
Exactly.
TIF and he's selling property too, just like
Property value
Rosecrans.
went up.
understood,
Imagine what the value of that land was before Mountain View went through there?
nothing.
Well, it was worse.
No,
15,000.
15,000 an acre,
Yeah.
And it went up.
and now it's worth
All right.
$1 million an
That
acre.
was-
So, moving forward, does staff have the direction?
Well, we've heard many things we need to bring back. One, a lot of accounting and auditing as we work through that, and we are working on both those fronts. We just had a meeting about that the other day about making sure we see the actuals. And because that may change the dynamics quite a bit.
Nothing gets paid out to anybody from any CDA typically to staff.
Right. And then the other thing is, you know, is there any money, are they successful in making that reduction? It sounds like it's going to happen, but it's not officially happened. There's some movement with Sauk Community College, and I can say Candace Berrucci, and it says John, cause she's doing some good work out on the Board of Regents. There's a lot of moving things we need to bring back to it. And we'll try to recapture what we listen to these meetings again and over and over again, because there's a lot of things that were asked.
I know you guys are gonna end up listening to this conversation at
We
least 2 or 3
do that
times.
a lot. We actually go back and listen to this, we watch it all. And write
So
down.
I have specific questions about, you know, this CDA, but I have some general questions
Here's the problem.
about how do we do CDAs, kind of the whole policies and procedures thing.
Yeah,
I'd like
and
to
there's no
understand.
one, Alan?
You need to meet with Alan.
So, moving.
We need to have that.
But she turned it
I
on.
wanna have that too.
Maybe a group discussion. on
Okay,
that.
but was you gonna cover the PID?
No.
Before, we do need to make sure that we get back to the master development agreement that we were talking about in the first place. So what are we doing with that master development agreement?
We are going to.
We need more information.
Yeah, we really can't do anything until
Okay,
we
but
have
just-
this piece figured
We
out.
want a site plan, in order to get a site plan, they want a funding priority.
So we're gonna hold off on doing that until we can get a little bit more clarity for all parties involved.
Just delaying us. And by the way, the CDA, the clock is ticking because it was triggered, which, by the way, you typically
Means
don't
we're already
trigger
getting.
until you have maximum capacity on year one. Our year one was like 500,000, so now everyone's scrambling, trying to get what they can out of the CDA because it was triggered. Should be triggered when we have a good, solid foundation for year one in tax increments. And now we're up against the clock.
So there's another question, what are the mechanisms for triggering that, why was it triggered?
It's in the
Let's
development.
have
Each
that
entity
conversation.
holds
An understanding,
it.
yeah.
Let's-
I'm just, These are, when we talk about the open list of items, yeah, we just added about, what, 712 on there, so.
Yeah.
So in the interest of time, from the developer standpoint, we're gonna try to exercise our vocals to say, we need to get going on this.
And I think we all want to see this move quickly. Like, I don't think any of us have the desire to have this be delayed any longer than absolutely necessary.
So is there a way to consider getting, I mean, I can give you a site plan with half of the project, and then if we get a parking structure, good. I mean, there's ways to think about how we get around it, you know what I mean? Let's come up with something that works for both
If
of us,
you get it,
make sure
here's
we
the
can
site
still
plan, if we
move.
don't,
And
here's.
you said today there was a,
But the
Right.
site plan that went through the planning commission is the one that is before us.
That's-
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's the one that went through the process.
Now you can condition that,
That's
so
right.
based on conditions of getting, you know, I mean, there's ways, legal ways to.
So,
you guys really are moving forward. I mean, you said this morning you guys are looking to have maybe those first two retail pads closest to RSL done by August,
Sorry,
maybe,
God.
right?
I've got the infrastructure
Needs them.
submitted, approved and stamped from the city, and I have the first buildings, the plans are sitting in my garage right now for last month. No different,
We gotta fix this.
literally sitting in my
What?
garage on my fridge.
One last question though, certainly RSL, Wasatch, whatever the combination is there, had to have realized that the reduction in the tax of the assessment was going to affect the overall TIF in the area. And knowing that, and knowing that you needed a mechanism to help fund the parking garage, I guess I'm just wondering what your thought process was on that, because certainly you knew that was
We're
separate
not
lakes.
short on revenue from our project to pay us back this parking structure. I don't know if I agree with your revenue projections, I'd have to dig deep in it, but we can show that we can pay back our parking structure with our own development. So if we can use that increment to build our own project and pay ourselves back for the parking structure, we don't see a problem with moving forward with that, and that's with the reduction of the training facility. If we show our commercial development will pay back that parking
If we
structure.
agree with your number, that sounds
That's what we
great.
need to do is hash out the numbers. and
Because what I heard from you was your investors need some assurances, but I guess I might have just been a little more confused. You said your investors needed assurance that they were gonna get repayment on that in order to move forward. But then I just heard you say that you feel like you can repay yourself back based on your own.
Through the.
Through the TIF.
Through the
They-
TIF.
If we agree
On
to
RSL.
it, they need
Okay, thank you.
prioritization.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've gotta show them that
So-
what's the deal, you know?
But that's,
So
but
I would
that's
ask
a clear
staff
priority above.
over the next several
Right.
days to have that conversation and see if you agree with those numbers.
Yeah, we'll be working on that.
Mayor, there's been a request to ask to bump an item up, and I don't know if it's gonna make anyone happy because everyone's waiting all night. This request has been made to move 2.13 as the next item. What's that?
No, I think that.
She said it'd be so fast. But
Is it less than 5 minutes?
Oh, yeah.
Already.
Well,
Pretty much got it.
I think we kinda had it at the, during the,
So I am happy to, I would be happy to allow 5 minutes total for discussion of 2.13 at this time.
perfect, we're good.
watch it.
That's,
You might
there's,
just
I need,
jinx it.
I
You
want,
might just jinx
No,
it.
we're good.
I want consent from the council on this first though.
I can take as long as you want.
I just-
As long as we need.
Alright, go for it.
approximately 5 minutes, how
I'm just
about that?
taking into
Approximately.
consideration our resident who's been here all night.
Yeah.
And has been waiting for this item to come up. So in your packet was the RFP information from the feasibility study for the OHV study. The amounts have come back at $39,155 and $32,925. Our recommendation is to go with JUB at $32,925. If you are in favor of moving forward with this study, our recommendation is to proceed now and start getting going so we have the spring and summer. But that would require a budget amendment, so
Hey guys, you asked
leaving
that,
it,
where's the funding come from?
leaving it to, impact fees, park
But
impact
we'll
fees.
have to amend the budget. It's not in the current budget.
So, we can move forward now, or we can wait, it just depends on your desire to open the budget.
Do we
We
have,
gone,
other needs projected coming up to open the budget that will accomplish more than just this one thing?
or,
We usually do,
right now I can't think of one thing, because we try to do the least amount as possible with fast growth cities. It's frequent because we always have a lot more.
So I'm ignorant of the process, how big of a deal is this
Oh, we have to have a public hearing.
We had to have public hearings, so we'll have to notice that 14, 7 days in advance of the meeting.
It's 2 meetings.
But if you're in favor of doing it, we can get it done.
Not on a budget amendment.
We can pass
What
it the
other
same day.
projects would that's 40,000 from impact fees take away from?
We never bring in enough impact fees to pay for any type of infrastructure, I'll just say that. You'll never have enough. So every time you pull out for study and stuff, you cut less, you're gonna do it.
To Mike's comment in the general meeting, I think that the potential economic benefit of this particular item warrants a $33,000 investment.
Yeah, and again, it's not, again, if we're planning roads and everything like that, we are having trail, we have to have access to those, and so if we undersize our roads, because we didn't project far enough ahead, because we didn't realize those trails are gonna be popular,
Enough trail.
the financial impact is massive, so.
When is it just gonna cover OHVs and cover the other issues that?
This is just OHV feasibility, so. We've already done plans and studies to show that the other trails are feasible, but non-motorized.
Talking about shooting range and golf.
Oh,
and all
yeah,
these
no,
other
that would be,
sorts of
those
things.
would be completely
I-
different studies.
Personally, I think this one is a little bit different because the danger is that if you wait too long to do it and the native walking trails are in and
Then we have a
there's no-
conflict between them.
Right,
Yeah.
right, the more time elapses between them, as well as setting aside proper amount of room for trailhead, parking lots, accessibility, et cetera.
I'm supportive of it, but I'd like to wait until the next time we have a actual budget item. I don't wanna do a budget amendment just for this.
Well, down walking room, there's always something coming up, and just being honest with you.
Sounds like there's $8 million worth of this.
Like I said, Alan hates doing budget amendments, so do I, but we know we're on.
Sorry. Getting old.
Will it require, like, will we have to show them our priorities? I mean, like, I'm just wondering if you're gonna have to remove something else in order to, because I don't know how close we are with our fund balance or anything like that.
We
So
don't.
how it needs to.
Impact fees were fine.
We're fine, money's in
Covers
there,
impact.
but it's
Oh,
just,
this is all,
Yeah.
okay.
is this the priority? Sounds like you're looking for the priority.
I think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alright, you can go home.
Yeah, go home.
Thank you, guys.
Not Wendy though, not really your stay. Alright, 2.6, discussion of proposed amended Creek Ridge, Mountain Ridge Master Development Agreement.
You got it, Jeff.
Oh, boy.
Well, it says John.
It is John, John's gonna go first.
Okay.
Yeah. So, deep breath. All these items are on the, so we have, the Creek Ridge, Mountain Ridge MDA, general plan, the reason, so all these items, we'll go through all of them, obviously. John's gonna do the development agreement first, it's on the agenda that way. Yeah, quickly,
Let's just get through it.
John's gonna do it quickly.
Okay,
We've talked about this enough times, so.
there are 3 development agreements that I'm gonna pass out, a couple of shorties. And then a monster.
Jeez.
The monster is
Mountain Ridge.
Edge's Mountain Ridge. So there's a lot of issues going on there, so let me just run through those. So this is amendment
To Creek Ridge.
to Creek Ridge. Remember the SLR, they're gonna remove, this is one of the short, little ones I gave to you first.
Okay.
We're gonna move 270 units out of Creek Ridge down to this. This is the current plan. You've seen this before. This is the proposed plan. This proposed plan does not show where it comes from
Yeah.
But-
further.
yet, but it shows in the bottom line the total reduction. The development agreement, the amendment contemplates it comes out of Area A.
We talk about the area.
What's that?
Just go back to that.
It's the top.
Area A is the top one, the higher density.
And keep in mind, there's 3 different areas in Area
You can specify, that's anything you guys wanna say.
well, I'll just call it out, that the two to the north, like bordering 118th, have the two apartment complexes maxed to 300 units each. And the area below the dotted line to the creek is still multifamily with condos. So just from area A could be from any of those, unless you specify which pod, correct?
Your call. You wanna put them in A, B, or C?
Or the pods of A.
Which pod of area A,
Oh,
or which
yeah.
type of product, I
Yeah, if
guess.
it goes into A, you probably wanna specifically identify.
C is built,
C is
yeah.
built.
Yeah.
It's not coming out of C.
Okay, so this was presented, now this is the big boy.
This is the big one, yeah.
So this was originally presented to the city council in September and then again in November. And includes some changes approved or recommended by the planning commission in December, just recently. So this is new stuff. So let me go through some of this stuff with you and identify. So the maximum number of units has been reduced. So there'll be no more than 546 residential units, no more than 350 townhomes, no condos, and the remainder is single family.
This is based on a recommendation the planning commission made,
From
so
the-
I'll,
yeah.
we'll
So
show
when
you
you
those
say
plans,
reduced,
so.
what was it reduced from?
700 and,
The last plan we had was
50.
750,
Last one we saw was 750.
yes.
And now it's
and
down
I'll
to
go through those when we
546.
get.
I don't know if you've actually seen it, but at least it was given to you at 750, 196 residential, 204 townhomes, and 350 condos. So that's the change.
So we-
That's substantial.
That's
Massive.
a lot of units to be removed.
And good for the developer. Thank you.
We'll talk about that.
Stop it right now. Don't even.
So this is the concept to control density in Riverton. So this is paragraph 2.2.1. And so this will limit density in another city. What a clever idea. So it will limit their density to 7.5 units per acre. And this is how they'll be allocated out, and we're gonna attach a map of the area.
Wait,
We can send you
send
this
this to you.
PowerPoint.
What's
Yeah,
what's the overall density on the Herriman?
546.
I know, but what's the number?
5.5 units an acre.
5.5. Keeps changing, so.
Which is what
Now
we
this,
recommend.
I'm going through the development agreement, this is an impact fee issue, so this is these are things that are in the development agreement that I wanted to alert you to and that you see, because when you read it, your eyes are gonna glaze over and say, what? But this deals with 13800 South, half of it's in Riverton, and half of it's in Herriman. So we agree to reimburse them for half the road width out of our impact fees.
Is that 100% reversible for half of it?
Only 50, no.
Curb to curb,
Well, I guess it's
that what we're
Center
doing?
line to curb.
Center line to curb.
Center line to curb.
So you pay for the curb and the asphalt. And then Riverton has it in their master plan. Not
Just to
center.
clarify, that's
Yeah.
reimbursement for the city's portion of the road, not including the proposed slip road part, right? Or
This
we
has
agree?
nothing to do with the slip road.
Okay, just wanna make sure.
This is
Well, they're showing
13800
those slip
south.
roads on there too, that's why I'm just wondering.
This
We
is
don't- we're not
specifically
paying
what
for
the
it.
center
line
line
to curb.
Yeah, this is just that road that's identified as.
So just making sure.
That's the only road in their project we're paying for.
Yeah.
Because Sentinel's already been
Well,
built.
impact fees.
Impact fee.
And the impact fees, I
It's
got
really
it.
that are being covered by
impact
impact fees.
Okay, so this is dealing with the parks, the trails, and the open space. So that the developer will build, and the city will reimburse from park impact fees for parks. If it's a detention basin, then they will add sod and irrigation as part of their cost. And then last of all, if the park, if we want more design or more expense in the park, if it exceeds the impact fees, we've agreed, and this is developer's proposal, we've agreed to reimburse him the difference.
I mean, if we design something
If we want a
that's
parking
greater
lot or a
than,
bathroom or
If we
something,
want
greater,
something
then we'll
more
pay for it.
expensive, we're gonna have to pay for it. That's really what that is.
But
But
we're
only
paying
if it's
for it
designed
anyway,
that
right?
Impact fees,
We're designing it.
we design.
We're gonna control the
The
design.
only way that we pay more than the impact fees collected is if we purposely design it to be more.
Yeah, better.
Well, and
We'd
if
have
we
control.
design it less, there'll be impact fees that aren't spent, that he doesn't get reimbursed for.
Right. And that's
exactly
good, that's in
right.
our favor, but.
Yeah, well, it'll really be
So
up
I'll
to.
make sure that we're not on them necessarily.
so I just wanna make sure the impact fees are to pay for the improvements in the park, not for the land.
Right.
That's
Okay, just making sure.
Catch on quick.
Okay,
Slow.
Took 4 hours. Oh.
so this is,
Still said yes to every
You wanna change share, you might be.
Can I change my vote on the mayor pro tem thing, we'll shut him up for now. Just kidding.
okay, so this is the storm drain. You're gonna get a presentation later in the storm drain from Blake. This contemplates option 1C, 1B?
C.
C is in cat.
That lines up with the presentation you heard last time.
Remind me which one that one was?
Gravity pipe.
Gravity pipe under
Pipe
ground.
under a trail.
So, the developer has proposed.
Down 138 or?
No,
Long-
long
long
Just the west side of the canal.
Buried pipe under,
Buried pipe all the way through Herriman, through Riverton. So the developers proposed that if that is the case, he'll convey the land or an easement, which is basically all we need, and the city will reimburse him for the infrastructure costs, which is the pipe, the construction, that type of thing. That's what that whole big paragraph says, and it also talks about timing.
So I can identify this big packet when I read. Can't sleep.
And you're gonna send us this presentation, right?
it also says we're not responsible for the
Well,
maintenance of the
chairs.
surface improvements, we don't have to upkeep the grass and stuff like that.
That's on top, that's the park, separate, so there'll be an HOA.
They've agreed to have their HOA maintain the trail.
Maintain the
So we don't have
surface.
to do that.
But it won't, will or will not be well, but okay, never mind.
We'll have an easement, and the easement will be a public.
Okay.
So now there's that commercial parcel that we've talked about. So originally, it was like just under 5 acres. It now has been increased to 13 plus acres.
And that's based on what the planning commission
That's
recommended.
based upon what the planning commission said, and they agree to hold it.
They said 15.
14.
Yeah, it was like.
It's just under 14.
It was right around that. It was a
They said this
percentage.
piece in this pod, and it came out to
It was a
13.8
percentage,
instead.
so
Yeah,
the staff had to help out with the exact.
They drew a line on a map, and it
yeah,
turned
we
out
had
to
to
be.
figure it out.
So they agree to hold it until 2025, and if it doesn't go commercial, then they can develop it residential at 8 units an acre. Now, that's in addition to the 546.
So that brings it up to, if they were to get all of that, what would that bring that up to? The total? They'd bring it up to the 750?
That's what Adam had proposed.
Okay.
I think it's pretty close to 750,
Yeah,
I have to do the
something
math.
Okay.
And also, we added in there, we didn't want them to take that commercial and sell it to a church or a school, charter or public, like somebody else did to us, as you may remember.
John?
Are there any other exempt entities we need to throw in there?
Tax exempt,
Well, I
any tax
could put a limit
exempt
on
entities.
conveyance and transfer, but I don't think anybody would like them. Sorry.
Or not sell to
To
any tax
any-
exempt
Cannabis?
Entity that is exempt from zoning.
Any state entity, any state, county,
No, that's not a bad idea to add state or federal
Yeah.
agency.
those are the only ones that can override the state, federal, or county.
Yeah, but what if they wanna build like a big state office?
Cause we learned from the one lesson, I'm sure there's one or two more
There-
lessons.
I don't know
we'll
who-
learn
you're
before
right,
we
you're
get,
right.
So let's
I
make
agree.
it more blanket.
It's a good
We
idea.
just haven't been burned by somebody other than those two, so we.
Did you hear what Joe just recommended? Okay, can you repeat what was just said?
So, we're contemplating adding other or tax exempt entities that you won't sell to, like the state.
Entities that would be
Prison.
exempt from zoning.
I think that's in conflict with planning commission, actually.
We get to make this
We override
decision.
them.
Well, one of the thoughts
Well-
is that there would be community and or art center and or.
That's true.
The one idea they proposed, or we talked about briefly, and it was like if there was another type of rec center over that area,
Okay.
if there was a Herriman Arts type
Arts
building,
center or something like that.
something like that, and so there's some that may fall in that category that, because it's just great location in the sense of Mountain View. And it's also doesn't, if people drive around, they don't really care, it's a destination location.
Yeah.
So we put the one bad boy in there we know we don't like.
And you can work on that if
That's
certainly, if one of those
sticking
came in,
point
you
for
could
me.
amend the development agreement, if something came in that you really like, and it's exempt because of this agreement, I'm sure.
Somebody wants to build a performing arts center or something, I'm sure we'll find a place for it.
What is she looking for?
So this goes to the 8 units per acre, and then we also put in there that if it is sold, well, there's a cap, and your 8 units per acre disappear if you sell the property. I don't know if I'm very articulate in that.
So if half of it got used as commercial,
They don't get.
but the other half, they don't get the
pile
density
up
of
the other.
they get 8 units on whatever's left over, basically.
The only problem in that one, I'll throw at you guys, is the holding period. Is if it's not sold, right? We can work hard and try to bring buyers in, et cetera, they can just say, why don't we sell?
Yeah, which we've run into already.
Which has happened to us.
And so that's the concern with me big time on that, is because who's making sure this thing's getting marketed well and.
Okay, so what I put in there is owner and city shall make reasonable best efforts to procure, commercial tenants to
Yeah, that's
build
wiggle room, man.
on commercial, on
What about,
reasonable terms.
what about a reset on the timer if they reject somebody to bring?
We could do that.
The only other thing was, as a planning commission, we didn't set a set timer. That was something.
That's from, this is from the developer.
Yeah, this-
5 years is just something the staff recommended, it sounds like. We didn't have a set number on that, whether it was 5, 7, 10 years. That was something that we felt like you guys decided on, knowing the economic development stuff more so than we.
Right, I know, it's gotta be reasonable.
Yeah,
but
I think
that's the thing,
appraised
is it's
value might be the benchmark.
So how, whatever word we can put in there so that it's not just.
Sure.
So what do we?
If they
Benchmark
reject,
for appraised value.
if they reject reject an offer at the
Okay,
appraised value.
reset for how long? Another 5 years?
We're not gonna reject it, so
Okay.
5 years is fine, I don't wanna be in the business of sitting on land.
What? You want to develop your land like a developer?
Yeah.
Shocker.
We can add that.
Can you add a year? I just think you should add a year, because it's your money.
We're talking 5 years, we're already past that.
Dan, you were too slow.
No.
So this is the
5 years.
math.
I just say
Fourth
5
year.
years doesn't make sense. At the 4th year, it wouldn't make sense. Yeah.
You turn it down?
However many years remain. So if it's turned down in
The
the
question
first
is,
year.
I mean, if we get in the 4th year and we find somebody that's a legitimate buyer, that's willing to pay market price for it, and they reject it, just so that they can start building houses and 8 months
In a
later,
year.
that's ridiculous.
Right.
That, we need a reset on the time to be able to address that, if they're rejecting a legitimate reasonable purchase price for some reason. And they have an incentive to reject that because they can build 8 units per acre on what's left.
Yeah.
That,
Adding a
That
year to
cuts
it would
both
be,
ways.
but I'd say adding a year to it is just as, is a lot of damage as well, right? 5 years, now you're not talking about a paper cut for
Well, that's
what I say.
an incentive for you to sell it.
Cause in the fourth year, then it would become only the fourth year of six.
Because why would you reject it anyway?
Because why would we reject it anyways? But we don't know. What if we don't have, what if none of us agree with the appraised price? That's what I'm worried about is.
Well, we'll have to create a
That's
mechanism.
not the right benchmark.
That's the more.
I'm okay splitting the difference on that.
I've gotten some bad appraisals back recently, so.
But if it's,
Maybe in our favor or your favor.
Yeah, it could cut either way.
Well, there's a way to deal with that. You can have two appraisers and they pick a third and the third guy's it. Everybody lives with it. I mean, there's all sorts of ways to
We
deal
could
with
just
those
let
appraisals.
Sherry decide. It's reasonable and
I
Sherry.
second Dan's motion.
You said 5 years, I know. But you're right, a mechanism might be a better way to go.
Let's not, wing this,
Yeah.
let's give it some thought.
but in concept, we're okay with the general idea.
So just,
We'll figure it out.
just point of order, I just wanna be clear about this, so in the work meeting, there aren't public comments. So I'm gonna ask
My
you guys
fault.
to please.
That's my fault.
I know, there's a certain amount of stretch there, I get it.
You're good.
And then I also wanna make sure that the comments directed at council are respectful and appropriate, so please make sure those happen in the future, thank you.
Good point.
This is a map of the commercial area. It's gonna be an attachment to the exhibit. There's a park strip issue. We've asked them to improve the park strip on Centennial, and they've agreed to do that. It's just not done. There's a blank in there, so I'm contemplating adding that blank that when they do the slip lanes, they'll do this at the same time. They get vested. These are the exceptions to the vesting. You've seen these before, they're not new, so I didn't rewrite, I just put the whole thing in if you have any questions. Next last one, procedures, this is Brent's
It's my
favorite.
favorite one.
That they have to use the then current process, not the substantive, but the process, so Brent doesn't have to keep track of 3 or 4 or 5 different processes. Any questions?
So wait, they have to follow the new process.
Whatever the process is,
Whatever the
the time they
current
come in.
That then, so if they bring an application in, whatever the current process
They don't get
is,
to use the 10-year-old process like
Yeah.
some people.
Then
are
some
right now.
people.
Yep.
It's hard.
Go back to that one. I'm just thinking of it.
Compelling countervailing interest.
The only thing that I'd like, and I've asked for this before, and I don't know if we've ever done it. It's probably just a pet peeve of mine, but I would like to see some wording in there that if they ask for additional density over what's been agreed to, that they reinvest in the city ordinances at the time. But I'm just one of 5.
They have to
Using the then
request
current.
additional density
Yeah, what do
without
you
having to
mean?
modify the whole.
They'd have to come back and amend the MDA at that time.
Okay.
well, they certainly have to do the
Density, they'd have,
PUD.
density, they'd have to come back, it's
How
on the
many
next
times-
slide.
How many times have we had plots come in for density changes that with organizations that have been vested for 20 years now? It used to happen all the time over in Rosecrest.
Those are always part of an overall density that's been awarded as part of the
Yeah,
master
that's,
development
they may
agreement.
change their site plan, but I wouldn't
They're
think they're
changing
changing
plots
their,
though,
but they didn't ask for more
But they
density.
didn't get more density.
on overall, but in those specific plats they did.
Probably, yeah.
And that's,
But it
Any
just
change in
reduces
density would have
someplace
to come back
else.
to you, though.
If they do
Especially
that.
this is
like I said, I'm only one, it's just a pet peeve.
There's a site plan attached to this that's pretty specific,
Has nothing to do with you.
right, Brent? The site plan, or the.
Yeah, their site plan is
Pretty
very specific.
Very specific.
Lot sizes, very specific,
Alright.
which is not something we usually get. with
We
the
usually
development
get-
agreement. We usually get colors,
And then we
right?
have to do trading back and forth, but that's not in this agreement. So to amend this agreement, so modification basically of underground utilities can be done by staff. So if they remove the location of an underground pipe, nobody cares, except staff and the developer. If they want to make a change, to the design guidelines, they have to go back to the planning commission, because that's where they originally went. All other changes or amendments come to the city council. And that's the end of me. And that's a very
That's the
short cut
development
of that
agreement.
very long document.
Which we will all enjoy reading to go sleep.
So on the back of it, there's
Yeah.
some of the exhibits.
There's not a legal description and all that.
There's not a legal, of course. But let me go through them because you probably like the exhibits more important than. Hang on.
So there's the map, the
There's
site
a
plan.
PUD overlay.
Mhm.
There's a design guidelines. There's the letter from the planning commission that outlines the conditions of approval. And then there's a map of the commercial. That's not all the exhibits, but all the exhibits are listed there.
The approval letter from the planning commission wouldn't be attached. At the end of the day, it'll be your ordinance that'll be attached, but I just wanted you to see all the conditions the planning commission put on there.
And we would recommend that you look at those when you adopt your ordinance and make it subject to the same conditions.
Any questions about the MDA, or you wanna quickly go through the applications?
Let's go through 'em.
Quickly? Yeah, you have a question?
I mean, I can say.
I can feel it. Okay,
I mean, it's related to this agenda item, so I don't wanna necessarily come back to have this
it's
conversation.
specifically about the development agreement?
Yes, so
Go for it.
there's a couple things in here that, the 5 years and then 8 units an acre.
Mhm.
I think we need to clarify, have some discussion about that, so I don't think we've reached any agreement or discussion there, so I don't know if we wanna wait and hear all the rest of it and have a discussion about that, but, if that's gonna be part of something we're gonna make a decision on, that needs to be decided.
Mhm.
And I think there's probably an opportunity here for discussion, but I think that the reset timer might be related to what density we wanna approve there. I don't know why we would go from 5.5 units over it up to 8 units on that little parcel there.
Can I make a comment from the planning
Yeah.
commission? So one of the things that we looked, because we had a lot of split conversation on this from the 5 acres to the 14 acres. We put a safety buffer of 8, that was just a recommendation to your body. Because if you think about it, if originally what they're asking for density wise only had 5 acres on top of it, they weren't asking for more units than what they actually have. And so there's 9 more acres that originally was part of that, the units that they have approved right now.
That's where the reduction from seven
And
fifty to
so,
540.
so technically, if we had made this agreement with 5 acres with 8 units per acre, that's 40 potential. But now they have the potential of going, what is that, 112 units with 14 acres roughly. So it changes the perspective. I just wanna throw that out there because we had a lot of conversation back and forth on this. We had some of the body that said, I don't think it's viable commercial here, and others saying that we wanna give them a chance. And so a lot of this recommendation came with the mixed perspective of what is the best way to do this to give the developer something, but at the same time, and that 8 was just, we think 8 is about as high as it should be. That's not what we're saying, it should be 8. We are saying it shouldn't be any higher than 8. And that's
So,
sort of where.
but like you said, originally they were showing the 5 acres there, and they were saying, if it's not
Same
commercial, we'll do
unit.
100 units on it.
Yeah, that's what
Which
they were
is
saying, they wanted.
Dramatically more dense than 8
They were
units per
wanting
acre
100 units.
on the 5
and that
acres.
didn't turn into commercial and became residential later. And so we went 112 highest potential with the 14.
On a bigger piece of property.
And so that was where the recommendation came from.
So let me just make it clear, I had originally put in this that is up to 8 units per acre, and they changed it to 8 units.
It would always go up to 8 units per acre. If the development agreement says up to 8 units per acre, you guarantee it's going to be 8 units per acre.
Yeah.
The spread is always the top end.
But right now, the way it's drafted is it's 8, not up to, it's just 8. So if you wanna tinker with that, I can tinker with that.
I think, in all honesty, being because what's the total number, if we were to,
So what they had before was 600 plus they were asking for 100 on that 5 acres, so it would have been 700.
Which is still 50 less than they originally were.
Right.
Okay.
What they have, the way the planning commission approved it, which would be 712? No, is that right? No. No, it's too late, I can't add. 6.
Yeah, 712, you're right.
No.
Intention is return it to the original.
It's 540,
So it's 546, right?
546 plus
200
112.
We're talking 204 units is the total difference.
But it would only take
558.
it, but it would only
Take it
558.
650.
to 658. Yes.
Instead of 700, which is what they originally had asked
Yes.
for.
So we're still, so it's 650 based on
Yeah,
650, 660. We're still almost 100 units less than what they're
Than the
already
original.
approved.
Then the original.
So for me, for them to be willing to agree to hold off for commercial for some, to try to put a good faith commercial in there, I think that a good faith effort on our part is to say, okay, if something can't come back, we'll give them 8 units to acre. So I'm okay with the 8 units to acre as recommended by the planning commission, because we're still gonna end up, even if they got it, we're still gonna end up way less than what they're already approved.
As long as
Wait,
it's not
what they're
R2.
already approved for?
So
They're not
ju-
already approved, what
What
did
they
you
asked
say?
for.
What they
What they had
asked.
originally asked for.
Yeah,
This is what
They're
they
not
asked for.
approved for anything.
Clarification too, though, that to your point is that with the way that it's currently zoned, there's a maximum that they can build. It's what, 5.5 acres on the little piece and 2 point something units on the bigger piece, right? And there's, I think I added it up, it's like, I think I added it all up, it's like 300 and,
Something like,
it's
yeah.
380 units or something like that, right? So it's not necessarily a reduction from 750 to 650, we're talking about an increase from 380 to 546. And there's some exchange for that, but I think that's an important distinction to make in what's being changed here, so. We're not going backwards from something that's been agreed to, we're having to go forward from what's already existing,
Right,
so.
and a substantial reduction in commercial that was
Right.
already on there also.
Could I make one clarification?
Please.
We had reduced the day of planning commission, a reduction of all condominiums. That reduced our unit count from the 750 to the 650. So numerically, as you're adding these up, you're not coming up to a sum of 750 now, you're coming up to a sum of 650.
Right.
Yes, so that's the
All the
100
condos,
units.
all the condos.
That's the 100 units that we
Took out
can quantify. So
All
that's where,
condos instead, and made townhouses instead, right?
correct.
And a point that sort of goes with that, just to be aware of, which I'm surprised we don't have on here, is the approved amount of units with the previous zoning, and then the 270 that are being pulled over is really close to what the number is. It's really close. And so when we pulled 270 from another area, and then what would have been approved already with our current zoning is really close to the number they came up with.
Yeah, that's true.
Understand.
And that's, I think, where I was getting that original comment was, overall, throughout the entire city, we're not taking a detriment in number of units for the city.
Yeah, I mean, that's an important consideration, right?
Plus, we're getting commercial out of it, or at least the opportunity to get commercial.
Okay.
I think that,
There's more, that's
there's
okay.
more to it, but
Let me
it's
just
not,
quickly, let me just quickly go through what the planning commission recommended on these. So, they've got 3 applications, so I know it can be a little bit confusing. They're amending the general plan, they're amending the zoning, and they're applying the plan development overlay zone. So, the general plan is first. So again, current general plan is commercial, on that larger piece next to Mountain View, and then low density on the other side. They did have a couple public meetings, a public hearing at planning commission. These are all the times we've talked about it. So again, just the 3 applications. That's the current general plan. What they asked for was, again, medium density residential over their portion of the property there. The zoning is currently A1. They asked for R210 across that piece. It's already zoned and general planned on the Rosecrest piece on the bottom, so that's why that's not part of the general plan of the zoning application. And then the PUD application includes the entire property, which again is why we're amending the third development agreement, you've got the Rosecrest development agreement to remove that smaller portion on the bottom. So the planning commission recommended, this was their recommendation, I can't tell you how many times I had to listen to that. But it was essentially change the general plan on the east side and then that bottom piece on the west side. And
So what's highlighted?
yeah, which is clear on this map, right? And leave the general plan commercial on that portion. So that was their recommendation. Now again, they also recommended that if you approved it, they recommended the 8 units per acre on that, but that was really part of your decision in the development agreement. On the zoning, basically exactly the same. They recommended rezoning all that portion from A1 to R210 and leaving that top piece as A1.
How is that gonna, would it not make sense if we are gonna try to market it as commercial, to go ahead and zone it as commercial?
So that is in the development agreement.
No, they're not.
They're not, so that's what I'm saying, so it is in the development agreement, that they're not commercial.
But go back 2
Yeah.
slides, will you, Brent? To where they, the proposal of their design.
That one.
Okay, so if you R210, that means a chunk of what's the school property would be rezoned to R210. If they do it.
Well,
It
no,
stops at our line there.
Okay.
Because what they own,
But in that drawing you just did.
I can't, huh? Yeah, I can't get back there, and I don't have a pointer. Oh, magical. So what they own goes actually straight up like that. So we obviously are not changing anything the school currently owns. We can't, they haven't asked for it.
No, we would.
We would if they came and asked for it, but it's not part of this application.
No, we would have to modify the school district's property in order to make this work. Because the school,
Yeah.
they have all the way up where it's commercial, where it says commercial.
Yeah,
That's
we're
their
not,
property.
we're not technically doing anything to the
But
school's
go-
property
go
right now.
But it's their
for it.
property.
Okay, so
Right.
go for it now. Sorry.
So that they would have to agree to this plan as well, so.
Without people's consent, we've done before too.
Where's the zoning map go? Sorry, go back.
But see,
That one,
isn't the school district's line straight there?
straight right there.
Yeah, but in the new thing that they have on theirs, it comes over into that.
It does, it comes over like this.
Yeah, so if you rezone everything in that area, you're rezoning part of the school district.
Well, it's not
property
owned by the school
R210,
district.
Right?
You can only zone the piece that they own R210.
It's, no matter what, the change affects the school district.
Yeah.
Right.
The zoning can't, but the.
The zoning
development
wouldn't right now, I mean, all we.
But
won't
to
be
be honest,
something
it
that
doesn't matter what we zone, the school district will do whatever they want anyway.
They have to trade some property with the school to do that.
So that,
Yeah.
They have to
I
trade
think where we're
some
going
property.
with this is that, you know, we haven't had that discussion with the school district.
So this development agreement is void if they can't make the deal with the school district. So if you approve this and they can't make the deal with the school district, starts over. So you gotta come back and amend it. So they are now on the hook to go work out with the school district.
Planning commission did the same thing on the PUD, again, they recommended approving it. The PUD, that's why the number, so the number on the plan, that's the old plan, sorry. The number on the plan is 600, but what they approved was only 546 because they removed this pod from the PUD. So they approved this, the lower pod, and then this entire side of the street as part of the PUD. They did not approve any of those units there as part of the PUD, again, leaving that out for commercial. The number of units they actually approved was just 546 on that piece. I'm not gonna go through all the design guidelines, but you've got them all. Setbacks and architecture, lot sizes, open space, public and private roads.
Can we go back to that real quick?
Yeah.
I wanna see that one.
The main
So
roads are
slip
public,
roads- Slip
just
roads
the-
are private, okay.
they're gonna
It's
maintain
just
all
the
the slip
interior.
roads.
So roads in the interior of
But
the
the-
townhouse, the alleys and
So
stuff.
on the areas that are family, that are single family, those will be public.
Exactly, exactly. And then we've also made sure, I think there's another one that shows the roads. So like the roads that access, the park and the school, like these are 60-foot roads, whereas these are 53-foot roads, so we made sure those are bigger. And then building elevations. So again,
Terrible.
Just kidding.
so again, that's what the planning commission recommended. Now you guys get to, figure out which one to do, that's my last slide.
We should have put keep calm up earlier.
Sorry.
So finally, I just made sure. Steve sent us an email a month or so ago following the school district meeting, indicating that they're willing to work with us on, I mean, they own that entire piece of frontage. And they're willing, I mean, they have no plans to build it tomorrow, and are willing to support us in our endeavor to swap that somewhere.
Yeah.
Why not, if they're willing to work, I mean, that's their property, it's not, it's the school district property, it's not their SLR's or Edge's property. Why are we still messing with this line, why not just focus on your side of the line?
Am I at liberty?
Please.
Alright, yeah.
So there's some stretch there.
But you have to be polite.
No, Steve was
We're
gracious
the
enough to
applicant.
attend the meeting, with the school board, I was told was the board, or a portion of the board and a phone in. It is true that they are not going to build on it immediately. They stressed over and over, it would have to be equal to or better than to incorporate a swap. I think the worry, Jared, is we began to just circulate thought process and Google Maps to find that suitable location in that geographical area would indicate a closure of a public park in order to do a swap, meaning.
There's a few different options we've been working on.
And yes, that would be one of them, but time is of the essence. So if we wanted to control the destiny of this corner and lock in at least a portion of that, which we think the meatiest or most enticing for a commercial business would be that corner of 138th.
To me, that part of locking it in would depend greatly on the wording of that 5-year period and what restarts it, et cetera, that's not locked in.
So the thought is that rather than hoping that there was a comparable donor site to swap, that we would just create a commercial portion that we would be able to work towards finding a user for immediately and not worry about finding that location. My understanding from the school district is that they have solicited every broker and the city to find a comparable site and have been unsuccessful in their endeavors for a number of years.
But that's a good point, though, that
we would have to
find
give them
the
probably
school-
more land
well, it
than
would
what
be,
they're
it would take
swapping.
longer to.
Yeah, it would be a bigger problem.
Potentially take longer to find a suitable site where, if there were interest, it could be moved on immediately.
That's correct. We could have it done in this calendar year.
The one question they did bring up too is, are we impairing the value of their property for if they chose to sell it to somebody else by not preserving their entire frontage along the corridor? They did raise that point. Is their property worth more keeping it congruent along there?
Right in,
I
right
don't know,
out on
yeah.
both ends of the property.
Right, those are important considerations for them. Are they reducing the value of their property? Potentially, those are at least worthy of consideration there, so.
So what direction are you looking for?
All the directions.
Well, this is ready to come to a city council meeting, right?
Well, as far as
in
timing,
terms
the
of-
planning commission
in terms
is
of
not.
process.
The planning commission has made all their decisions.
What
As
I'm
far as
saying
that
is,
goes,
is in
yes.
terms of process, this has been through the process, it's now moves on to the city council. That's where we're at in the process.
So bring it to us at city council meeting.
Yikes. We'd like to get your comments to make sure we.
I got a lot of
bring it
notes,
to you.
so
I
we'll
think
talk
we
to
made
them.
a lot of comments on
But yeah.
particular important points.
I've heard comments about the development agreement. Any other comments, other than maybe the commercial and school side on the site plan itself or anything like that? You'll look through it, read the design guidelines.
Does anybody have any
all that.
issues with anything on the east side of Sentinel Ridge? Is it just our concerns on the west side of Sentinel Ridge, is that really the biggest issue? Okay.
Yes and no, right? So there's a there's an answer about the entire project and then
Sure,
there's, right, so, I would acknowledge, I think there's some positive things with this proposal as it stands right now. I think reducing units in Creekside is a win, right? Regardless of the transferring it, I think reducing that is a win. If we can eliminate 270 units in the city, I think we agree that's positive stuff.
We didn't eliminate 270
Well,
units in this.
this is the problem. What we're saying is that as it is right now, they have a maximum of, I can't remember what the number is, 300 something units, okay? So we're talking about, with this, the way it's proposed right now, increasing that by 200 units. So it's a net reduction of maybe 70 units, okay? And these are really approximate numbers, I can't remember what those exact figures are, but, and what we're saying is that we're gonna reduce 70 units in the city. In exchange for that, we get a modification to what our commercial zoning is, that is, it locks in some uses for at least a period of time.
Potentially lose.
And potentially lose it, right? There's a double-edged sword there. The issue is that just because it's zoned commercial doesn't mean we're gonna get commercial there. At least with this way, we're saying for a period of time, we're guaranteed that there's gonna be a commercial use and only a commercial use. There's parks.
There's no guarantee.
There isn't, right?
Chance.
There's a chance, right? There's also, you know, the water, stormwater thing, is a solution. It's a solution. It may not be the only solution. It may not even be the best solution, but it's a decent solution here. I think that those are positive. I think there's continuity. We have the ability to limit density in another city, which is a win. I don't know that they were going to substantially build a whole lot more than that as it is, but at least being able to cap it from the MDA they have right now gives them almost 35 units, is what I was calculating.
Unlimited.
Yeah, they can go crazy. I don't know that they will, but they could. Being able to cap that is a positive. So those are positive things with this, right? If we can reduce density here, we can reduce density in another city, we can reduce density out at Creek Ridge, we can preserve some commercial, we can solve stormwater. Those are wins. I do have to say that the way this is laid out, based on the feedback of the residents, creates some positivity around putting the single family up against the existing development. Lauren Smith, resident, has been very vocal, representing several other people over there, that they appreciate a transition from their single family homes to more single family homes, rather than going from single family homes right up against them to high density townhouses. So they like this transition. The parks, I mean, these are positive. What I see as the ultimate decision for us is determining, is it an appropriate change to add a couple hundred units in here, transferring them from another place in exchange for the benefits that we're getting and the commercial that we're losing, right? I mean, we have to weigh all that together. Commercial part, I think, really is the essential decision point for us, right? I know that that's come up over and over and over again. I've had feedback from people saying that they think there's a great use for the commercial against the corridor. We've heard arguments against that. I don't necessarily buy those as much. I mean, we go 4 blocks north and there's a massive commercial. We go 10 blocks south and we just had a discussion about another massive commercial that we're talking about, right?
The fact is, if we build houses, there's no chance.
Right, that's true. Here's the downside. If we don't approve something with this MDA, we don't come to some agreement, and we leave the zoning as it is, we have a commercial parcel that we don't control it being commercial. The current landowner is inclined to put chapels or charter schools or other things that are there that vacate our ability to do any commercial there. That's something we have to be concerned.
The current landowner is the school district.
The one against the road.
Against the road, that's true. But we have this whole part zoned commercial right now. General plan commercial, right? So just because it's that way doesn't mean we're gonna get commercial over here. The churches and schools will trump that. I mean, I I don't know that I'm clear on a decision, but I'm really clear on what the issues are here. There are alternatives, right? We've talked about swapping with the school and preserving that for a longer period of time. We've talked about different water solutions. I think, there's a presentation about that to talk about what are some of the options, whether or not we need this solution or there's another one that's viable for us. I'm just not, it's hard for me to tell the citizens of Herriman that we wouldn't be happy limiting some density somewhere. But on the other hand, this looked pretty dense to me. And it's a lot more dense than what we have master planned. Do we think it's a good idea to change the master plan to accept density? I think that goes against what we've been talking about in
Master plan or general plan?
Yeah.
Which one are you talking about? You said master plan.
General plan, excuse me.
So, Steve,
Um,
I'm just kind of thinking out loud.
I think you have to look at continuity in the area as well, though. Because if you look at, again, what is planned on the Riverton piece, and again, this is not an advocation for density, but I think you have to look at livability and continuity and how that creates a community. And honestly, for me, I don't think that with what we anticipate Riverton to do on their side, and then what is just south from the high school moving out, to say that we're gonna just carve out this piece and not consider other options than the way that it is currently general planned. If you're gonna say that we're not gonna consider that and just say we're gonna require the bigger lots the way that is master planned to go in at least the one area of it, I don't think that's a successful product in there. Because then
it's sure less visually appealing, right? It's sure less aesthetically pleasing. Yeah.
And it doesn't create the connectivity that going through a straight subdivision process, which is all we would get in leaving it that, going through a straight subdivision process, we're not getting any of the connectivity and any of the other open space and amenities and things that create that connectivity in this area, which honestly is needed in this area, based on some of the other developments that are already out there. So I think you have to make sure that when we're talking about, the current general plan, yes, it does come with an increase of density, but I think you have to look at how that ultimately would look and feel based on what already exists around it.
That's an important thing to consider, yeah.
I wanna also call your attention, Steve, because commercial is a big deal, and we made this change. Again, we made the change to commercial a year ago.
April of 2018.
Against the wishes of the landowner at the time. So the landowner did not want us to change this to commercial, and we did it anyways.
As a result of the study that we paid for, it said you need to preserve all of your.
Well, but even our own planning commission said they don't think that this should be commercial.
No. A very select few on the planning commission said that. Many of the others felt like that there needs to be some.
And we can look this up.
Our planning commissioners
Okay.
are not economic development.
Hold on a second.
Experts.
Regardless, we made that change against the wishes of the landowner. The landowner now has come back and has said, we are willing to work with you to try to make that commercial a viable option for your community. They don't technically have to accept that change because they're already zoned. And so the fact that for me, the fact that the developer's coming in saying, okay, yes, we're gonna try to make this work, we're gonna try to do what you want, which is putting in commercial development in this area, is something that we need to keep, to keep in mind as well, because that's something that we said we wanted very clearly a year and a half ago when we changed our general plan against their wishes, and now they're trying to work with us anyways. And so for me, that's another factor of why I think that, getting something in place when, and Bren's looking up the actual numbers, because I think what you're saying here, if I remember correctly, overall, the total number of units wasn't necessarily changing across both properties, the SLR property to the west, and once you moved everything, it was my understanding it was essentially a net zero change. So we're not actually increasing density in the city, we're getting control of the area, we're all of those things add up, And so that's why I'm asking Brenda to just verify that for me here real quick. Because when I look at it, I look at a developer that's coming in and trying to say, okay, here's all the things that you've said you wanted. Here are all the things that we're trying to do to make that work. And still give you a really nice product and a really nice community. We asked for, the slip roads was a concession they made. There's all these different things that they've done. So for me, I am of the opinion that we're pretty close to where we need to be. We may not be exactly right, but I think that when we take into consideration the fact that we're getting so many wins and we're gonna get the commercial that we say we want, or at least for a time period, we're gonna get the option to pursue for a time. I say we're coming out ahead. So that's my 2 cents. That's where I think we should be. I don't know if this is exactly word on right, but I think we are pretty close.
So process, procedure, direction, you said you made a bunch of notes, here's like my main things that I think would have to be done before you go to an actual city council meeting for a public hearing, vote, et cetera. We have to have a legitimate conversation with the school district. Like we need to invite them to a meeting and discuss the issues that affect their property.
Can I ask just a clarifying question there? Why does it become incumbent on us to have that conversation? Because as John already pointed out, they don't make this work with the school district, then the MDA goes away. So I definitely understand where you're going, but again, I don't want this to become our issue because it's not. We're good partners with the school district, but when it comes to making what's proposed work, it's up to the developer to make it work. And I don't know that I'm comfortable stepping into the arena of having that discussion and trying to work to come to an agreement of whether it's going to work or not, because it's not our fight.
I believe it is our fight, and the reason why is that it's the school district's property that is being discussed, changing where that property is. They would have, yes, it's on.
I absolutely agree with you.
But it's up to us to have the conversation with them about the other possibilities, legitimate possibilities that we're working on to move that property and maintain that entire frontage as commercial without this involved. We need to have that discussion, do our due diligence.
I think that's a separate discussion from this development. I think the discussion of whether we're gonna try and swap the school property because we wanna preserve that all for commercial is something that is ours, but it doesn't pertain to this proposal. That is how?
They're shifting they're taking a chunk of the property. The best part about the school property is they front both roads.
I agree with you, but when we talk about trying to preserve all of that and make a land swap with them, the first thing that we have to talk about is the only way we're gonna be able to do a land swap with them is for us to come up with money to buy property someplace else to swap with them.
There's other ways.
And I'm not saying there's not other ways. The most logical play is for us to buy property, and we have absolutely no ability to do that.
That's a big one for me, is we need to have that conversation with them because it absolutely affects it. We need to be good neighbors, and we've had our district representative out at meetings very upset that they've not been involved in conversations that affect their property, regardless of anything else. The second thing is to me, a couple of things I've written down, several of them, is the no sale to church or school, expanding that to me, that would need to be any entity that's exempt from zoning conditions. And I get what the planning commission is trying to say about other people might want to be there. This is commercial. We spent money on an economic development plan that said preserve this as commercial. It's freeway frontage. That's what it needs to be. That's what it needs to be in agreement if we were to consider this. Then the third is the holding period for that piece. I mean, the option, we talked about that extensively on behalf of all of that, but that would need to be, the details of that would need to be worked out to where it would be acceptable to even present to the public.
Okay.
Those are my main three.
I disagree with the first two.
Okay. I think the school district has been a partner to us. They want to continue to be a partner to us. And the thing about it is we're not, it changes it significantly with this because it takes off that whole intersection at 138 South if the switch is that way? You can't, it's not,
Like, I would
once
agree.
it flips.
I don't think that's a long or a hard conversation to have, but
No.
it's worth having. But in the preliminary conversations we've had just conceptually, the school district has articulated they are willing to work with us.
Mhm.
They've asked a question about if we're impairing their value, but they largely expressed that if this was the idea that we wanted, they would be amenable to doing this. So I don't know that it's a hard thing for us to have them come in and say, yeah, we're okay with this. But to your point, I think it's reasonable to say, we'd really like the school district's formal approval in a formal meeting to say, yeah, we're thumbs up, we're good, and have the discussion.
Displeasure that
Yeah.
we're playing with their property without
I understand your point, I would agree with you.
And when I spoke with them, they're not ready to make that kind of decision. They need to know the financial things on this, how it directly is gonna impact them. So they're not gonna be able to come in and just say, yep, we're good with that. They're gonna want hard numbers. They need to know all that kind of stuff too, just like what you're talking about.
And I agree, I don't know how much work they've already done.
And I agree, I absolutely agree with the partnership that we have with the school district, and they are great partners, and I don't wanna do anything to jeopardize that. My whole point is that in order for this to work, the property owner and the applicant has to be the one to go and give them those details, and to allow them to be the ones to say, yes, well, they've said we're conceptually amenable to it,
Cause
but
it's
there is
their
some
property
details.
and the school district's property.
Yes.
They have to
Yes.
work out the swap.
Absolutely.
But I think that there are some options that we've been looking into, as far as changing locations for the school district, that I'm not ready.
Let me go.
And it's our accountability,
that's
and it's our
talked about
accountability to
4 times
residents for a general plan we put in place as a result of a study that we used to.
We've been looking for other properties, but they are always very clear about it has to be equal in value. You talk to some board members, you talk to some staff members, it's conflicting information.
Yeah, so let's have a
I will,
conversation.
I will
on
tell you that, what I'm confused about is, because of the densities coming in the area, we will need a middle school, east of Mountain View corridor, and still one west of Mountain View corridor. There's not much property left on the east side of Mountain View corridor for any middle school. The concern was it's too close to South Hills Middle School. They're saying, we're still gonna need it. So the operational people are saying, they don't wanna let that go for a school site area, cause they think they're gonna need it. Now, when they adjust the property, now the board members saying they're willing to work with us to provide some equal in value. Everything we have to offer is in topo, steep topo. It has major money to make it flat enough for them to build. So we have been working on our school sites, but I always wanted that for some other use for the city. I told you before, I've come off of that table because of what we have growth wise and safety issues wise. I like to keep the kids on both sides of that mountain before I'm crossing it. That's, and until we get some solid conversation, school district is a great partner. They're willing to work with the developer, the landowners, us. If we can make a site work for them, they're happy. That's all they ever asked us to do. Now, if they're saying equal value, you have to get down to the east of that property, get where it's flatter. That's better, has equal or better value. Every other site we're looking at, it will cost us money to make it equal to them. So I don't know how we fix all that. I'll take,
We need to have some
in reality, when you talk to Scott Thomas, it's years away before they change their mind, they don't need that school site. He's got a school site now, he knows he's got a school site now. And he can't give that away right now, he has a solid plan.
Sure.
Brenda, can I ask you, have you come up with that number yet?
On the current general plan, because there's a range, right, 2.5 to 1.8, whatever the ranges are.
Go with the high number.
It's between, I don't want anybody to quote me on these numbers, because the general plan is general. They're fuzzy bubbles, right? It's between like 330 and 450 probably.
3 and 4.
Like, again, just depending on the range of the. And because that one piece is Rose Crest, so they would get
The density.
the density.
5.5
Yeah, yeah.
And no open space requirements.
So if we took the low end of that, 330, plus the 270 they're moving is 600 units. So at the low end, they're coming in at what they basically already have approved. Or already have zoned, sorry, not approved, so.
Not zoned. General plan, general plan. Zoned it. Huge chunk.
General plan.
And commercial.
So ultimately, that's look, the people who voted for me in District 4 have articulated over and over and over again to me their opposition to all density. They just feel overwhelmed by it. That's all they see. Because it's all good in District 4, they don't want it. They want to avoid it everywhere they possibly can. I
They
think
should
there's
talk to some people in District 2 then.
I understand. District 2 probably wants the same thing, yeah. But I don't think it's necessarily unique, but I feel like the mandate from the people that voted me in is to do whatever I can to limit density at all costs. People have said they would give up almost everything to limit density. I don't necessarily know that's completely reasonable, but I at least think that's the direction they would like me to go. So if we're saying if we leave it alone, we could get all our commercial filled up with things that aren't commercial, and we could get 450 units if they want to, push the numbers, which their developers are going to want to push the numbers. We're talking about a difference between 450 and 546.
Not removing the 200 or 270 from the other pods.
Correct.
Yeah. It's a net 170, yeah.
And remember, again, the potential of none of the open space requirements, none of those other things that
Right.
come with
No park, no water solutions.
no water
So to put it in
solution.
perspective for
And those
that,
are real
when
things.
we're talking about actual density. You're looking at the same number over the same area, but if you take out the park, those units are spread much farther out, they're much less dense.
It's true, yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
You
it's
go
not
play
just
in
the
your
number to
backyard.
number, it's the continuity,
You
it's
have to
the
have
layout,
the
it's
park
the.
because
Well,
you
not-
have no
yeah.
yard.
We've had this conversation, going back, my first 2 years was, well, what does the city want? Do we wanna push developers to do higher density and give us land for open space? Or are there areas where it makes sense to have lower density and less open space, cause they actually have yards and wider streets and more actual open space?
And the decision or at least every conversation I've been part of has been that we've wanted to push that density towards Mountain View Corridor, which is the transit corridor, and put that where they have access to get in and out of our community, which is what this does.
But this area has no lack of density. I guess I would
Yeah.
like to point that out.
And if you
Question that.
See what's on the Riverton side, there's gonna be plenty of density.
And also, you have to remember those units that you're moving from Creek Ridge, they do not come down 134th, those feed on 118th. So you are congesting a very congested area with even more traffic that would not be there. Those 270 are gonna go out 118th. That's the direction that goes. And you are compounding the huge mess. I have to drive that now every day on 134th, it's a nightmare. And now we're just gonna compound it even more, and not only are we gonna compound it by more than, or at least what was planned, but now we're gonna drag 270 units and put them down here, which I think picks winners and losers in different places.
We're not really,
I don't
it's
think
not
so.
270, I think it's, like we said, it's difference from maybe 450 to 546, so it's 96 units. That's kind of I'm trying to be realistic.
Yeah.
If they max out what they currently have and they took 270 away, the difference is 96
So 100
units, so
units times how many trips per day? What's the national average? 10 trips per day?
170,
About 10 per day.
174.
So it's about 1,000
2.5
trips
per
per day that
peak
you're
hour.
adding
'Cause ours-
extra there.
Absolutely.
But we're making the assumption too that everybody is going north. If we leave all those density, all that here.
According to the study, 85% of everybody is going north. We just barely had a study showing that.
Well,
No,
but if
I'm saying-
134th, 138th goes through, I think these people are gonna go out this way a lot too. I mean, we definitely divert some of the traffic farther from this intersection. We divert some of it down 138th that way.
going on the very first, cause all this Riverton traffic's
Oh,
gonna be there
this
too.
is gonna be a mess, right? I mean, we gotta know. I mean, you look at the north side,
I'm
there's houses everywhere
Yeah,
up
I'm
there.
just saying that the people who elected me, this is exactly the feedback I'm getting. They're sick to death of all the traffic,
Yep.
they're sick to death of no commercial, no tax base, those kind of things. So how do I sit and be quiet and not say, it's not what they elected me to do?
I agree.
So I get the feeling you have no direction.
Well, I'll come back with an
Got all kinds of directions.
But let's,
Don't have one. No.
let's not forget, honestly, that at the end of the day, go back to the slide of the process that has been going on for months and months and months. Because at the end of the day, we have a duty to allow a process to take place, whether you agree with it or not. We
Okay,
have.
So if you want the process, I'll tell you, for me personally right now, if you wanna take a straw poll, short of those three things occurring, my vote's no, I need a potty break.
So what you're
If
suggesting
you
is
wanna
that
take
we
the
should,
time to work out those items, then maybe we'll.
so what you're suggesting is that we should be bringing this to the city council for a decision.
I'm not saying it has to be on the next meeting. What I'm saying is that we have a duty as a body here to allow this process to continue, and that we shouldn't be a roadblock in the process. We've talked about some of these issues for months and months and months, and honestly, to some degree, I feel like that we continue to talk about them, even though we've had opportunity, and in some cases even made decisions, but we still talk about them, is a way to potentially maybe slow this process or slow it down. But you go back to when this started back in, June 20th, and some of the comments of being a rush project, I don't think that dictates anything that's rushed by any means.
I never ever said it was rushed.
No, and I'm not saying that it's from this body, but what I'm saying is that we have an applicant who has followed the process, who has done more than has been asked of them to do in a process, who has done, I think, everything that they feel like is reasonably possible for them to do, to hear the feedback, to hear the concerns, to incorporate that into a plan that they are still comfortable with, to present to us. They've made it all the way through the planning commission process. It is now up to this body. Do we have some questions? Absolutely. I think it is our duty now to be as expeditious as possible in allowing that discussion to take place, but not to prolong it unnecessarily, and allow the process to move forward so that they have an answer one way or another. At the end of the day, I think
But
they're
I
just.
think we wanna find out a way they can get their thing approved in some way, right?
Well, that's obviously
If we don't
the
have,
goal.
the reason we're having the work meeting is to try and hash out some of these issues before it gets to a vote, so that they have the best chance to get an approval from the council.
No, I absolutely
If
agree.
there's a whole bunch of unresolved issues and questions and
But some of these
arguments and
issues-
discussions, we go to the city council and they get it turned down, they have to start all over, it takes another 6 months.
I absolutely
I mean,
agree.
No, but they don't want that.
Absolutely, they don't. But my point is that we've talked about, let's just take the commercial area. We've talked about it, they've come back, they've done, they've tried to incorporate, they gave us 5 acres, and then they come back, and now today we're sitting at 14 acres.
Because the planning commission told them to do it.
Great, I went through the process.
Whatever it is, we're sitting with something that is still more than it was last time. I think as a body, we have a right to say, okay, we asked for more and we got more. Maybe it was because of the process, but it's still sitting in front of us tonight with the applicant sitting here, even though it was a planning commission recommendation. It's still sitting here, and they're still sitting here with it, rather than, they could have just said, nope, not doing it, and pulled it. But it's not, it's sitting here in front of us tonight. So what I don't wanna do is I don't wanna be a body that says, we want more commercial, and we come back and get more commercial, and then we say, we want more commercial again. I don't think that's fair to the process.
Well, I don't understand the argument. I don't think any of us want to delay or stall this. The last thing I wanna do is keep seeing, this is as bad as McQuiston.
Oh, yeah,
I don't wanna
absolutely.
keep seeing this on the agenda either. I think that we move this through, but I do believe that we have the responsibility to have our questions answered, because we have a public to answer to, because I just sit in the seat at the pleasure of the public.
Don't disagree one bit. My point is that we've talked about some of these issues over and over and over again, and I'm not sure how much longer we have to talk about them, because we're all gonna have our opinions here, and we're obviously in a different area on some of those issues here. And so we're not gonna get to 100% consensus here. I think we can certainly get to a plan that everyone's comfortable with to approve, but I feel like, again, it's probably, I don't think it's intentional, but I think we're belaboring the process because we keep talking about some of these issues over and over again, and the commercial one is the one I bring up particularly, because again, we went from nothing to 5, now we're sitting at 14, but I'm still hearing that that's not enough, there's still concerns about that. How are we gonna resolve that? We have to figure out how we're gonna resolve that and allow this to move one way or another, and allow the applicant to know one way or another, whether they have a shot of getting the approval they want, or whether they're just gonna pull it and walk away. Cause I don't think any of us want them to go through all of this and get to the end and reject the plan. But at some point, I think we owe it to them who have been following the process that we've outlined to give them solid direction of what way this body is leaning and allow them to make a decision on what way they want to proceed forward.
And I think that's what we do, if we have it on our agenda tonight, it just made its way through the
Right,
planning commission, it's on our agenda. We had the discussion, there's some questions, we asked for some feedback, so we have another work meeting to answer the questions. And I don't think that we're belaboring the process, we're saying, it's gone through the process. It's to us, and I think it would be really irresponsible to have this kind of questions and then go, okay, let's make a vote, I'm not ready for that, but we can do that if you want.
No, all I'm asking is that we, as a body, do everything we can to keep this process moving on this particular application, because I know you guys have all heard it from the applicant as well, the frustration that there has been in moving through the process. And I'm honestly just as frustrated as dealing with it, because again, there just feels like some of these items to me that we talked about over and over again, and I don't feel like we come to a clear resolution on it.
Right, and we might not, and then we'll vote on it and be done with it.
Just from the planning commission, the process that they went through, our major concerns were answered with transportation, corridors in Mountain View and Bangor are really close to this development. 134, we can't do anything about it in between those because it's Riverton's. It's not, we can't do anything about it.
Right.
And then the parks and the commercial, and then also another way out of that development was 138. We felt those were the 3 really major things that we felt like were addressed, and that's why we were able to give a recommendation. It would have still been a planning commission if we didn't feel like they addressed a lot of what we had. And so, at least from that perspective.
So, I just wanted to.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jared.
I was just gonna say, as far as moving on, we're at 11:25. I mean, to both Clint and Sherry's point, we just moved out of planning commission, our first work meeting, our first look at the new documents, the new proposals, etc. We've identified many questions, not just one, but many questions. I feel it would be irresponsible for us to say, yeah, let's call a vote next week, because I would have to say no when I've identified 3 things I think are easily talked about and worked through to see if we can come to consensus. Where a few weeks later, that could be a yes for me.
Are there any, I have Jared's 2 questions very clearly. Are there any other questions that we can bring back answers for you guys for?
Right now, my head is splitting
I'm
open,
sure.
and so
I'm
I'll
with you.
email you.
Okay.
I'll just
Email.
reiterate the potential timing extensions on the commercial
Yep,
piece.
and that's, we'll work on that.
Which was a direction that was already given. And then I'll have a conversation offline with them, just in terms of density as related to those commercial pieces. I'll have a question and I'll talk offline with.
I also don't glaze over when I read these, I read them word for word, and I think it's only fair to allow us enough time to read a long document as full of legalese to make sure that we understand it completely.
I can email you guys, do you guys want electronic copies?
Yeah.
I think we have, what's that?
I think there's just one question I want the council to try and have an answer for, because I think it'll give us clarity. and we don't have to answer it tonight, we can come back and answer this, but, so the way that it's general planned right now is this part is commercial
All the way to the bottom.
to Sentinel, right? So it's
And
this,
everything on that side's commercial.
right, this is all commercial. We don't control this part up against the front road, that's the school property, right? And this is, you know, general planned commercial, but we don't really control what goes there either. I mean, just because it's general plan commercial, it could be schools, churches, or any approved uses for commercial. I mean, some of those wouldn't be very appealing over here, right? This area is low density residential, and we're talking about changing it to medium density. This is already 5.5 units an acre, the way that it's currently set up. The question I wanna ask is getting 14 acres that we can control and specify uses for and lock in for a period of time, to be determined, right, a period of time. To me, that is more valuable than something that may not ever be anything.
It's absolutely worth considering, and the devil is in the details.
There's details to work out, but if this was commercial, I think we'd all win. It's whether or not we can control whether or not there's any commercial there. And I don't know if 5 years is the right window, I don't know if we wanna ask for a little more, there's density, if we don't make it, there's time, I mean, those are some specifics to think, but the question to ask is that more valuable than a wish based on our general plan? And I think if we can say that that's more valuable, then I think we have a compulsion to find a way to make this work. That's kind of where I think we're, and I think that's what the point you're making, yeah.
Alright, I'm gonna step in here at this point, and unless there are any new points for these items, I think we're gonna go ahead and move on, if that's okay with the council. So we have essentially talked about what at this point?
We're on 2.10.
We've gone through.
2.10 is next.
2.10 is next. Discussion of the Herriman Crossroads Master Development Agreement, Port Rockwell, Redwood Road.
Okay, I will try to be brief, but we are looking for some feedback from the council tonight on this draft master development agreement that's been floating around the city for a couple of years. Again, this is the southern peninsula of the city, fronting on Redwood Road, and to the west will be the future extension of Mountain View Corridor. Currently, the property is zoned C2, RM, and MU2, so all three of those zones are currently in place. This was the exhibit that's attached to the draft MDA, just kind of showing the phasing of the project and kind of the scale. This is the same plan that you've seen before. About a year ago, I came to you and said I had a number of concerns. This was the list that we'd shown to you at that time. Several of these concerns have been addressed by the developer. Some of them we're still working on, but they have been making some progress. The applicant recently re-engaged his attorney, Paxton Guyman, contact us. We sat down with him on November 21st, went through some of our concerns. He submitted to the city a revised or amended draft MDA. John, myself, and the Parks Department has reviewed it. I think maybe even engineering took a quick look at it as well. We reviewed it and shared red lines with John, and I think you've shared this with Paxton. Mm-hmm. So right now they have our last set of red lines. That's in their court. We are also trying to be a little more proactive on this. We've looked at the area, trying to determine where we think the open space should go and what might the trail plan. They had a trail plan. I think we would like to change what they've been proposing. So our team is looking at coming up with an open space and trail plan for this site. We also are looking at really what is buildable area on this. Right now, the MDA is just contemplating that we have kind of this gross acreage and we're assigning density to the entire area. We think that there are areas that are non-buildable that should not be considered for density, so we're reviewing that a little closer. Another thing we've discovered in reviewing this proposal is we are so used to doing these development agreements in connection with planned developments that inherently we always think that we're going to receive 20% open space. But that's only if it's a planned development. Currently, this development partnership has not requested a planned development. It's our recommendation that this plan moves forward, that would be one of our asks, that it does have a PD overlay. That way we can ensure that we would obtain the 20% open space. They are proposing some open space, but in the code, we wouldn't get this much. So this would be something that would be a benefit of doing the MDA. We also are hoping to achieve that by doing an MDA, we would actually reduce the density. We could make an argument that if the density is equal to the existing base zone, but we're also getting a number of amenities that we wouldn't typically get without doing a planned development, that may be sufficient. The language of the development team is saying, we believe we can get something out of this, and at the same time, we can show you that we're willing to accept less density than what the base zone allows. So we're still negotiating that with the development partners. So really, these are the planning objectives. If we move forward, we do believe that we'll get a better design standard than if we rely on the base zone. If we do the planned development, we'll get more open space. That's very clear as we're looking at our current zoning tools. We believe we'll have improved trail access. And then hopefully, obviously if we do an MDA, we will have some type of a density limit. We'll have an agreement as to what that looks like. One of the other things that we've been interested in this project is, of course, there's a phase development plan, and part of that phasing is there's a commitment to do commercial development in phase 2 and not at the end of the project. That was one of the other things that the city's been interested in the past, and that's still on the table. So with that being said, we wanted to see if the council is still interested in us maturing this plan, because it's gonna take, again, we spent a lot of time out in the past. We stopped working on it for several months just because we didn't have the bandwidth over the summer to work on this. But we're picking it up again. As long as the council is still interested in, we'll keep moving it forward. But if for any reason the council is interested in just saying, let's back out of this, we don't wanna move forward, we wanna hear that now, if at all possible.
To refresh memories and maybe bring Steve up to speed on this one, I don't know if he's sat in on any of our meetings on.
No, we haven't talked about this for several months.
Correct me if I'm wrong, or I'm speaking out of turn, my recollection is that they had originally submitted an application for a whole bunch of apartments. And tabled that to look at this at somewhat, I shouldn't say somewhat our request, but we're willing to look at this instead of. But kind of the overhanging threat is if this doesn't move forward, then they'll just revert back to that application. Which we could say yes or no.
Well, I think we'd have to say yes, because they got a zone.
It would be hard to say no to, because.
They have an application, but we've communicated to the development team that it's incomplete, and that in order to move forward, they need to submit quite a bit of additional information.
But it is a lot committed, right?
But they have submitted an application. Yeah, when it's complete, then they're vested to a process.
Really, and going down that road again, tell me if I'm wrong, but even if it's hard to say no to that, the number of units for the apartments is less than the units here, and the rest of this could be rezoned
right.
If you want, there's options, but they brought this in, but they haven't put the time, effort, money, resources into really putting a full-fledged plan together.
Right.
We were trying to help them do it. We can't really spend our time and resources doing their work for them. So the question is, should we continue to help them along? Is that something
yes.
else?
Yeah, and in fact, at one time, Jared, when we sat down early last year, we were looking to see if we could even bring on a consultant, and I did approach a couple of local firms, and it was either too expensive or they just weren't interested.
So we tried to match them up with someone that could help them with their design.
if you think, I mean, I do believe that these are, this is my opinion on the planning objective. This is what we will likely achieve if we keep going down this road. We will definitely get more open space. If we do a planned development, we'll get more open space if we just let them do it.
Do you think it's worth going down this road, or just let them proceed with the apartment application and we can look at rezoning, just like we talked about?
It's a toss up. Yeah. Because one of the concerns that I have is this property really ripe for development? Is it really ready to be entered into the market and be developed? Some of the consultants that I've looked at said, no, we're gonna be doing entitlement for property that'll likely sit there.
Right.
But, that was just one consultant's opinion.
So is the question, do we continue to help them or do we get apartments?
Well,
That's kind of what I just heard.
the base zoning and their MDA, what they're proposing, we will get multifamily in this, yeah. They're looking at doing townhomes, stack flats, yeah, there will be multifamily.
I'm sure you made a good point. I mean, one of the things that's been discussed in prior conversations on this is the same property owner has been actively developing property they own on the other side in Bluffdale.
Yes, and in fact,
I've been putting a lot of effort and time and resources into that, and this is kind of we've applied for it, we want the entitlement.
I actually have the Bluffdale city planner, when he saw this on our agenda, he contacted me this week, and I believe we're going to meet on Friday to talk about our.
This Ken on the corner right there, cause I know, I think Staker, check that, I know Edge is doing a huge chunk of residential and the other piece.
They own some, but I think a lot of the development you see is Staker, or either of those.
Edge and Staker.
It was Staker property.
It was now Staker's property.
I didn't know who it got.
And there's a bunch of flex space and some of the
Yeah, Devcore's,
Yeah, I don't, he's gonna go find out about that.
Even if we do spend some time and bring this back to you, certainly, there's no commitment on the part of the council. We were just looking to see if you still had an appetite or an interest in at least having more discussion on this. If you do, then we'll continue to mature it. I think that the items that you had outlined there's obviously some potential clear benefit to the city long term. For me, I think with as busy as we are with other things, I'm not willing to right now say that I want the staff to be able to invest that much time in it, based on some of those other factors you just mentioned. And again, given the current state of development and workload that exists, I just don't know that for me, that right now becomes the priority.
I have a tough time with the same thing. If this were Academy Village, I'd say it's a priority. We're gonna spend all the time we can on it. At the same time, if the developer property owner were putting in the time and resources to address it, we do what we can to help them along, but if we're being asked to do the work for them, I have a hard time with that part in an area that likely would lay for, in my estimation, a couple of decades.
In their defense, they have obviously re-engaged their attorney, and so they have contributed some work to the project recently, in hopes that we could get this across.
So is it, if we give them direction, these things need to be worked on, or we're gonna do the work for them, right? Like, that's a tough hurdle for me to get over, if we're doing the work for them.
Oh, me too, because do we do that for everyone else?
No.
Are we gonna do it for everyone else? Is that the
The current, I'm sure that Michael doesn't have much spare time in his agenda, in his schedule already to.
If it's pointing those things out and saying, these are things you need to work on and bring back in an acceptable form.
Yeah, I agree with you.
We're gonna do it for them.
Yeah.
I don't think they're asking us to do the work, I think they're wanting that kind of feedback.
At one point in time, they said they were done. He said if we wanted to make it, change it, and it was up to us to do it. But I'm not saying, Brett, that was their demeanor the last time we met. I think Paxton is willing to work with us.
Well, I told their attorney that my view of what they do is they bring a picture and say, do you like this? No. And then they bring it back, do you like this? No. Same picture again, do you like this? And I hopefully got the message. I don't know what they're doing, but we'll see. They retain a decent attorney. He's a
I would
smart
agree
guy.
with that description of who it's being turned.
I have seen the same pictures many times.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion or consideration on this?
Nope, that's good, thank you.
2.11, follow-up discussion regarding operation and maintenance costs for the Rose Peak outfall project. Well, this is just a follow-up from our previous discussion on this item. A couple of previous slides to go over here.
Water's taking off.
So, went into Jonathan's office one day and he had, after our last meeting, he had like 7 textbooks open on his desk and he was calculating pumping costs. It was amazing. Haven't done that since college, so. So here's all the times that we've talked about this item, just kind of putting it in perspective. We've kind of going all the way back to when it was contemplated with the Rosecrest NDA and the adoption of the new master plan in 2012 for the storm drain. And then I'll just turn it over to Jonathan. He's really put a lot of work into this, and he should get the glory.
So this is a copy of the original, well, not the original, last council meeting's discussion, so I'll go past that. Quick little overview. I know everyone's received this information already, but if you do a quick little recap. The alternatives that we've discussed prior, consider everything in yellow. So everything that's in blue, that blue dotted line, those are the baseline improvements that would be required regardless of the alternative. So they were removed as far as cost from the analysis. And I also wanted to make sure that as I was going along, and I just want everyone to know that these options that follow Welby-Jacobs Canal, it's not in the canal, it's on the upstream side, or excuse me, on the west side of the canal. All right, so I'm gonna flip the road just a little bit. So north is now to the right. Again, the baseline improvements are everything from, can I borrow the laser pen from?
That's right.
So from the baseline starts here all the way to there, so the cost that we've talked about is this yellow portion. And we've given that cost. You asked us last time we presented to provide operation and maintenance costs. So that was the intent of this, to give that information. So again, alternative 1A is to give a open channel on the west side of the Welby-Jacobs Canal per the adopted storm drain master plans. The operation and maintenance considerations included spraying the weeds, dredging it, revegetating as part of the dredging effort, and then removing trash and debris as needed. There were obviously some assumptions that were made, and they're kind of listed up there. Alternative 1B and 1C, as opposed to an open channel, this would be a gravity pipe on the west side of the Welby-Jacobs Canal. The only difference between option 1B and 1C is that 1C would encroach with required easements, of course, within the Welby-Jacobs Canal corridor. Now, the operation and maintenance considerations for this, as it's a gravity pipe system, is jet washing and vacuuming and cleaning out the pipes and the cleanouts. And then option 1D, again, this is on the west side of Welby-Jacobs Canal. This would be a pressurized line. We'd be boosting runoff from here all the way to the outfall at Rose Creek. Bearing in mind that would go the whole stretch and would require a gravity system from all areas back down to this pond, where then we'd pump it. So there was a need for a redundant gravity system to get everything to that community college pond. Just wanted to point that out. So again, the operation maintenance considerations is jet washing and factory cleaning the gravity system to the community college pond, and then the power cost to run the pumps to discharge everything, or excuse me, pump everything to Rose Creek. It also includes, so when you turn pumps on, even without running the pumps, if you just turn them on, I call it the spike cost. So to turn the cost on, that was also taken into consideration. Option 2, very similar to the one prior, other than we go, instead of a long Welby Jacobs Canal, we turn west and we go up to Sentinel Ridge storm drain sewer system and discharge into the gravity system along Sentinel Ridge. So the considerations on this, again, it's jet washing and cleaning the cleanouts for the gravity system along Sentinel Ridge, as well as the power cost, similar to the option before. The difference in this and the power cost is going to be a little higher because we're going to be boosting it a little higher in elevation. Oops, sorry. Let me click happy. Alternative 3, you're going to notice just a teeny bit of an update. This is a change from the last time. We were planning on tying in here. We looked at, and we took our GIS system, went out and shot the connection here and realized we don't have the fall we would need. We'd have to fall east to tie into Rose Creek. So extended the gravity line just a little bit longer. And again, this is a gravity system, right? And so what we'd be doing is having to clean out jet washing back to these cleanouts, assuming 2 times a year. Lastly, option 4, like I've mentioned before, this is kind of the close cousin to the do nothing alternative, which is we don't outfall to Rose Creek and we require full retention within each development. The operation and maintenance considerations is removing noxious weeds and preventing them as well, dredging, regrading the pond as needed, as well as reinstallation of the pond bottom as part of that dredging effort. So those are the items that were considered in the operation and maintenance, which brings us to, let me just point out the main difference from last time to this time is now, right here, I've added a cost rating for this instead of saying moderate, high, medium, and whatnot. So alternative 1A, all the way down, so that you have capital cost. Again, that does not include right-of-way cost. This is just the cost for the infrastructure to get it installed. This column right here, obviously, is what I've been working on, been giving this cost rating. That ties into this right here. So for $3 signs, you're looking at $16,000, $24,000. $1 sign, 0 to 8,000. And these are annual operation and maintenance costs.
If it rains a lot, they go up. If it's a dry year, they go down.
And again, here's the right-of-way that would be required, the anticipated right-of-way and approximated for anything that's outside of Herriman City. Anyway, so you can kind of see here we have the most expensive annual cost here would be the fully retaining everything, the cost to keep that cleaned out is obviously the most expensive, and then everything else in between. And you can see here the ones with the $1 signs for annual operation maintenance costs. Those are those with gravity systems that are in pipes and cleanouts. And really the last after that is just questions and what are our next steps.
The answer, the O&M answers that question. The other one I had from the last meeting was the budget for this, where did it come from? What impact fees are collected from what areas, etc.
Okay, so the storm drain
What
impact
money
fee
should we have?
has the certain service areas. So East Herriman is the service area, which is from 138 south all the way to the south border, and from the east border all the way up into Rosecrest. I think, how far would that go? All the way up to about where Rosecrest Road turns, about that line. That's all of East Herriman. So any impact fee collected from that area goes to this and every other storm drain running, carrying major water in the roads.
So what I've heard is that the budget for this is $700-something thousand, but I don't know where it came from, or where it anticipated it coming
From those impact fees collected within that area, that's one of the, so when the master plan was done.
from. So what I'm getting at is that, going back to our meeting several months ago, this all should have been planned for, and we charge impact fees to pay for all of this stuff, so.
And the impact fee at the time was to pay for, where's it at in the budget? It's in the current budget right now. Budgeted for an open channel to go through here that was approved last year.
So the impact fees that were assessed were calculated off of just doing an open channel. So we assessed our impact fees.
Knowing that we couldn't do that because we go past our city boundary and we don't own the property, et cetera, et cetera.
That was done in 2012, went through a public hearing, was adopted by council at the time, so.
So we'd probably be short on budget because we wouldn't have a plan for this kind
Well,
of cost.
also, the TIF that we talked about, we just had earlier in the discussion, is also planned for this, so that 43 million bucks that we had, there was money set aside in that to pay for this, so that also is a backstop. But right now, we don't, so back to this, we don't anticipate building this whole channel. So right now, there's like $700,000. It would, if we don't have to pay for any right-of-way, we will probably end up with that money next year just from impact fees, and we could build the whole pipe system. Now, the pump is gonna be expensive. Rosecrest is on the hook for building the pond. They've approved the plans. They're supposed to start this summer, and that's the real big cost. So we won't have to come up with that. They are anticipating get paid back out of the TIF, but that's another discussion. So I don't believe there's any shortage because we have the money backstopped by TIF. The impact fees for what we need as it comes along, we've already got $700,000 and we'll continue to collect it. It's just the timing of it. So the money's all there. It's just as each building permit comes in, we'll clear the next phase, as it goes.
Potential.
Yeah,
So
if
my-
development stops.
My understanding is that there's still a bill pending with the school district for their impact fees for the high school.
And they still gotta pay.
High school and elementary school, we.
Do we know what that is?
Is that in addition to the
And does that go into this too? Okay.
So
That's what I
the,
mean, like you said, the anticipated impact fees to be collected in this area. We're just doing the math, like it should be a lot more than $700,000.
Oh, no, it is, and we've spent some of it, but there's more coming in, so that we'll have all the money. The question is, we're not gonna build the whole thing today, so we don't need the whole thing, and as new housing comes in, we'll continue to build it, but right now, we only budgeted in the budget. Alan's not here, but there's more money in the storm drain impact fee, we only took out $700,000, because that's all we needed, all we anticipated doing this fiscal year. Next year, we'll put another $700,000 and just keep putting.
Project cost.
Yeah, and we may do it for this project or another project, so you will still have all the money, but we don't want it all in a single year. We're not allowed to just store it up, after 6 years, you have to spend it.
So what's the fund amount of the stormwater impact fees right now?
I'd have to ask Alan, but
It's
last year when we were budgeting, it was over $1 million with the 700,000 coming out of that.
Got it, so,
And that does not include the school district's money at all.
no.
So if we get another $1 million, which we're anticipating budgeting next fiscal year, you maybe spend another $300,000 or $400,000 on this, and then maybe the next year we only wanna do the piece we want.
Understood.
We don't typically charge impact fees until building permits and plats come in. The school district doesn't submit building permits to us, and the plat was done way after. So
it's
that
in a
was
separate
the
bill.
delay on the payment on that, was we were waiting for that information.
Do you guys understand the difficulty looking at, okay, well, what are potential solutions and costs of those? But we can't tell you really how much money we have to do it.
So when we did the master plan, we thought it would be an open channel, because there was nothing out here, it was just a ditch along the
We didn't
road.
have a proposal.
And so as time changed.
But you have to go through the city, you'd have to, come out right away, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, and those were calculated in 2012 prices. And so when we come up, generally what we do is we find as development comes in, so when Wasatch or Rosecrest have done an improvement, we've generally gotten all the right of way for free. So you see all the right of way along up to the canal where development has, we haven't had to pay for any of the right of way. We anticipate we can afford it out of the, apparently she doesn't like your notepad.
Somebody noticed I ran out of paper.
He's run out.
Thank you, Jackie. So,
Real quick, before we move on any further, we're about to move into our next day, so we just need a quick motion from the council to extend our meeting into the 9th of January.
Make motion to extend our meeting to the 9th of January.
I'm not certain.
Don't say to the end of January.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
I heard an aye, but it was really soft. So I believe there's enough money, if we have to buy right away, we would just pull from other projects and we would delay other things longer. But all the money comes in through the impact fee, so
Again,
that's a 10 you want to do.
Budget cycle, you set the priority list.
But since the development's going forward in Riverton right now, we would want to secure right away or buy it. Or
There's some urgent needs to take
There's
some
urgent.
action, okay.
And that's happened
But
this year.
this, just to be correct, this is one of the things that's being talked about with the development agreement that we spoke at length earlier, so this is one of the things that would be part of that, is them giving us the.
If we went forward with it.
If we move forward.
I'm sure if we wanted to just buy the right of way, they would very politely
Yeah,
charge us a really nice fee
we
for
haven't
that, huh?
sat down and tried, we can sit down if that, the intent, so the council gets to make the decision. If you don't want to do the development, that's fine, but we always have the option to go buy right of way. Outside of our city or inside our city, we can go buy right of way. If that's a choice you want to make. It will cost us, yes. Will we have the money? Yes. Will the funds keep coming in? Yes. We have it backed up by the TIF, and we have impact fees to continue. Well, the TIF 2 days ago, yesterday, things went sour on it. Well, it's 2 days now.
That's right, correct that.
But that's the situation. Historically.
And the potential of delaying other projects that need to be
So if
completed.
you look at all the
if we go
right of
that
way
route.
that we have through the city, we bought none of it. None of it came at expense to the taxpayer. It was all deeded and dedicated as development came. So we anticipated
Meeting's over.
that, but it's not required. We have bought right of way.
I love it.
We're, whatever you wanna do, you get to make that decision.
Jonathan,
I should have a button like that.
You have it in your pack.
Thank you for putting off time.
Maybe a little earlier than that.
Good night.
Double check your.
Happy Thursday.
You can have there, yeah, it's always wanted a calculator now. Join the turnover of the
Okay, so
calendar.
do you
Just
have
an
all-
8 hour plus
Do you need any further direction, or is this just an update?
That was just
Okay.
Is there any follow-up you need from us?
No, I think that was good.
And to be clear, which option, was it 1C that you said was gonna be?
It should have been 1B.
1B is the
I
option
think it
that's,
says 1C in your agreement, but,
It doesn't say 1C in the agreement.
oh, it doesn't, okay.
I didn't
Yeah, it
identify,
says option one.
I just
I
identified.
think we said that, but we didn't show it. We
so
didn't.
It was
1B is
1B,
along the corridor, not into the, not correct, buried pipe, okay.
Yeah.
So you don't, it'd rather not be beholden to to the irrigation company. If there's ever an issue with the canal, even though our pipe's in the right of way, there could be liability to go in there and help them repair, fix something. So it's better to just stick with one entity, stay away from them.
Okay, awesome. We will then move on to item 1214. Discussion regarding Olympia Hills and communication regarding future meetings for the proposed development. Tammy.
Okay, so this can go fast, it just depends. So as you know, Olympia Hills is back, going through the process of seeking approval to the county on their project. Yesterday, they held a meeting where there was a presentation given by city staff and the developer, or county staff, not us. We had staff, attend the meeting. And if you want kind of an update on what was discussed, I can turn the time over to Michael as soon as we're done going over a few things. But they also have 2 additional meetings scheduled. They have one for January 14th as a public hearing at 6 p.m. And then they would like to do another one on January 28th as a public hearing at 6 p.m. They would also like to see if Herriman City would host that public hearing here at City Hall.
There was a new update, they're gonna go to this.
That's
And
going on.
if not, then they will just look at a school.
And they're actually currently looking at, Copper Mountain Middle.
That's what I was told, that
That's
they were gonna go
probably a
to
better
the middle
At
school.
6 o'clock.
I would hate to mislead the public in the fact that we have anything to do with this particular
Right.
development.
And along those lines, so we want to know then, what information would you like us to share with the public? Would you like us to share their information regarding these meetings?
Just simply the meetings that the county
Just the
is
meetings
having,
that the county's
meetings
having.
Make it clear.
at that location at that time.
And
We
then
just wanna
they
make people aware that
also-
they are having a meeting.
Yes, and then they also have a website where they are asking for public input, and public input can be done electronically through this website. So
So we'll share
I
that.
just want to know if we can
Yes,
share
please.
that as well.
That one's a little more difficult for me. If you looked at the website, it's like a promotional website for Olympia Hills.
Yeah.
It's not a soliciting information for, opinions from residents, etc. It's a
Propaganda.
sales piece
It's-
from the county
Yeah.
for
Is it
Olympia
post- probably
Hills.
a free
Bring that input on that then?
Well, I was
To
told,
link to the form, no, because it's
It's
not
part of
part.
I was told that it's gonna be important to have good public showing at these meetings, especially the one here on the 28th. And so my fear is that if people feel like they've went online and sent it off, then it might decrease the attendance, and it's gonna be very important to have
Yeah,
people
the
here.
5 people that are for the regional growth, responsible growth, that were attending that, in that work meeting, they expressed strong desire to have a hearing out here. The county council agreed with that. And that's
Steve
why
DeBry,
they're saying-
actually, and I will
Yeah.
publicly acknowledge him, he's the one who
He
put
did
forth
great,
that
yeah.
motion, so thanks to him.
I would say we wanna make people aware that they're having a meeting. That's it. As we've talked about before,
Yeah.
we start promoting their website, or
Yeah.
as people start confusing it and thinking that we're involved in it.
So if everything goes, this is coming from staff, county, if they get all the hearings, they could possibly have it on for approval, if everybody works for it.
For a decision,
Yeah.
not for approval, for
Whatever
a
I said.
decision.
I disagree with whatever I said.
Freudians.
Thank you.
And then, in addition to that, obviously, there are 2 public hearings. Does council have a desire to have city staff stand up and represent the city's position
We actually,
on?
we actually had this request given to Michael by one of the residents there. They wish there was more city staff at county meetings. I thought that was an interesting request.
My initial reaction is at this stage, yes, it greatly affects our residents.
But how many does it take to be there to give them more staff they want?
I
Well, only
mean, I
one
personally
staff
plan
can
to be
speak
there
on
and
behalf of-
comment at both of them, so I guess it's a question of, do we want staff to make an official city comment in addition to elected officials? I mean, I'm just gonna give my opinions and state a lot of things we've gone through.
I would caution
Yeah,
staff.
I think elected officials.
They just want us to be has to be at the meeting. More staff, I'm thinking, well, you want all staff or? what
Well,
is
I
it?
mean, I attended the work meeting, the first part of it. I didn't, the emails I got said they were gonna discuss it at 11 a.m. I was there at 11 a.m. and then realized it wasn't on until 1. And I couldn't stay, but I listened to the public comment, and other cities had representatives. Lupta's economic development director, Riverton city manager, and attorney were there. Alta's guy, they commented on the tax increment potential changes, as well as, not all of them, Olympia Hills, but a few. So that, I don't know if that's what you're referring to, but I didn't make any comment. I hadn't talked to him. I didn't wanna make a comment there, wasn't prepared to. We hadn't talked about anything, so I can understand that if they're seeing other cities make comments in those situations, but for these hearings that are coming up, I'll say I personally plan to be in each
Yeah.
one.
Well, and last time this came up, we did a combined joint statement that was
Maybe
read.
prepare a statement.
Yeah, I think that would be something very seriously to consider, reading a statement. Especially the one that's not gonna be in Herriman or at their meetings or whatever. I think that's a good idea to do a combined joint statement.
I think we'll have more people of our team attend, I just don't think it's appropriate for us to make comment. We don't do that in other cities, we're going to comment about their projects.
Yeah.
The county's the same thing, they wouldn't do that to us either.
Otherwise, I heard that argument a lot too last time, and I understand that they're a different governing body, and I respect that. But that being said, we are a city that's within them too. So I believe that even then we do have I think it's appropriate to have a voice there because there are things that they
Not
decisions
anything about a
they make.
voice, but that I actually think it comes to elected officials.
Yeah, I agree.
Because even if you had 10 city staff there, only one city staff could speak.
Yeah.
Because we'd all be representing
The same
group.
entity. So.
And we'd have to prepare, if you gave us direction, we'd have to prepare a statement that you give us the nod to do.
Yeah, for sure. No, I agree. It needs to be one of them.
Yeah,
for
just
sure.
so that it's a unified voice
Do
from
you
the
want to
city.
prepare a statement for you, or do you just want it to, your own speech, or? Okay.
I don't know right now.
I support it with a combined statement. Me too.
We were having engineering look at some of the traffic stuff, we had planning look with water, so we had everybody preparing their own comments from their areas, we're gonna kind of consolidate them, but we don't have to do any of that, we can just.
No, but
Well,
I
for
think
limited-
that's good to.
I think some of the things we are concerned about is, if you take out the track acreage, 100 or 120 acres for each shoe, 50 acres for Surfing Park, 100 acres of Jordan School, they own in the Boundary Act. They just cut 300 some odd acres out of a 600, 900 unit, made it on 600 acres, and you have
6,000
When you
units.
sure fence all that out, it's not what we propose on
Well,
density,
well,
it's
because
over
the
10.
density is gross, not net.
Even still, you wanna compare their gross density to our gross density. City of Herriman is about 1.
Well, we need talking points as you mentioned.
That's what I
The
think.
bullet points,
On
if
all
you could
those.
just consolidate it to a good bullet point, I think that would be really helpful.
But all those numbers are in their presentation, but they don't identify how many units they end up being for.
Of course, that would not look good.
No, but it's more than that, I think that
Probably see
The-
the stuff on their website.
the county's trying to solve problems, they think there's,
That they cannot solve, they're not their problems.
yeah.
And then I just included what the media has
Some of
started
it
saying about
sounds
the
nice,
project.
Yeah, I just think there's a disconnect between what they're trying to accomplish and what they're proposing, they don't equal each other.
The good intentions are completely disconnected from any kind of plan to achieve it.
Oh yeah, I read this.
Yeah, it's all on their website.
I love how they keep touting the 20% for trail parks, and I was like, look how generous we're being. If it's not an ordinance, you know?
Do you have the direction you need, Tammy?
I think so, we'll just put together some bullet points on each of the topics that show concern, and then we'll make sure that each of you have them, so that if you go and speak.
We'll share the meeting.
And then
time.
we'll
just
just
share
share the
names.
meeting times, and that's it, we won't refer to the website.
Make sure it's the county, is it? This is not. We have to spell it out.
So important just to reiterate that, cause I again responded to a lady last night saying, well, last time you guys were making the decision, now I think this, I'm like, no, it never was us,
I
so.
Boy Scout. Email, why would Herriman want this?
Just to reiterate that, because the decision's not being made here, it's important for you to attend these county meetings.
Alright, then we will move on to city manager updates.
And I probably should keep paring these down unless something just popped up. The biggest thing I have to do is come to the deals than just a BC. He likes his
We're not
job.
worthy.
It's kind of a big deal.
The big deal to, our community university is, Chief Peterson has all of us on the back of help groom that position and get them ready for it. That's the comment he made, but if I someone else, you absolutely the next person ready, so that's a compliment to you, all of us, that I think we learn a lot from each other though, so. We should know what that, there is,
I think he's learned way more from us than we've learned.
Is just, we gotta go to a closed door, we have some property that we need to discuss. And I think for Wade, to voice his valuable information that we need some direction on.
Okay. Do you need a motion, is that what you're saying?
I'm saying I'm done.
So you're saying done? Okay, I will accept the motion, which is number 13 on the general meeting.
I'll make a motion to temporarily recess the city council meeting to convene in closed session for the purpose to discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property as provided by U.S. Code annotated, which 2-4-205.
Do we want to include professional competency, character, and mental health of individual?
We gave you a brief, what we have on there, so.
It's on here.
Oh, is it on there?
I'm sorry, I just read the red part. My eyes just went to the red.
Wonder if we could get an update on the use of that.
Okay, so I'll amend my motion to include also to discuss the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual.
Second.
Okay, motion is second, Clint?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Jerry?
Yep.
I vote yes, the motion passes.